Well, good afternoon, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here over on the 5 by 5 channel here this afternoon on a Wednesday. Now, the 22nd day of December. Hopefully, you guys are doing well. We are 3 days away from Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of you guys, wherever you may be tuning in here today. If you are here stateside, glad to have you aboard. And of course, to our friends across the pond, good to have you guys aboard as well. Good evening to you guys. If you're joining by the various platforms here today, if you're over on Twitch, good to see you. Over on YouTube, while we're still there, good to have you aboard. D Live over on the foxhole.app as well. Good to have all of you guys aboard. Hopefully, you guys are going to have a very Merry Christmas and negate any of this garbage coming at us by way of the WHO and Fauci and everybody else, and just be with family. Screw all that crap about all this. Oh, you need to vax up or ask if they've been vaxxed, all that crap. It's all nonsense. Forget about it. Live your lives as we were called to do, period. So that's what we're going to get into here today. Yeah, there's a lot of fray. Doggone, you almost cannot get around this stuff hardly anymore. But there is some other news, Nat, that we are going to get to here today. So that being said, let's just get into it here. We've got the typical lineup here today. I'll be leading off. Probably have KB, I would assume, join here second hour. If not, I've got something I can play here for the second hour. And I think Sunny will wrap things up on the day, as it appears that Season Pixels and 412 have prior obligations. Obviously, this being close to the holiday with all sorts of things going on, family, friends, gatherings, you name it. Hey, can't blame them. So that being said, that's what we're going to do here this afternoon. Let's kick things off with a piece out of hotair.com here. It says, Tommy Loren says, let's stop treating Kyle Rittenhouse like he's a rock star. And this was pinned yesterday. Kind of an interesting piece, given that perhaps maybe you guys know or maybe don't know. Turning Point USA apparently this weekend just had a big showing of folks. I believe it was down in Arizona, if I'm not mistaken. Tucker Carlson was down there, and apparently Kyle Rittenhouse was down there. And obviously, he went there and spoke about some of the things going on. And of course, we've also seen pieces that Kyle Rittenhouse has come out and says the media should expect him. And I'm assuming one could only allude that perhaps a little Nick Sandman type action will come to play here. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that until the lawsuits drop. But nonetheless, we get this piece that it says official confirmation that the hero worship of Rittenhouse has gotten dark and ugly is that even Fox News populists are urging people to dial it back. Within hours of Rittenhouse being acquitted of murder last month, The Onion took this tongue-in-cheek peek into its crystal ball. And apparently they put out Kyle Rittenhouse sentenced to 45 years of CPAC appearances. Perhaps maybe they're not far off. I don't know. Who still reads The Onion these days? But nonetheless, as in the days following, Rittenhouse revealed that he'd allowed Tucker Carlson's team to film him for a documentary during his trial, and that he'd soon sit down with Tucker for an exclusive interview in short order. He swung by Mar-a-Lago for a photo op with Donald Trump and began what seems to have been a carefully planned tour of conservative media. Still, he said the right things when asked about becoming a political symbol. It says how polarized it became is absolutely sickening. Right or left, people using me for a cause that should never have been used as a cause, he complained to Carlson. In an interview with a podcast for The Blaze, he dismissed the idea that what he did should be celebrated. When a host of the You Are Here podcast told Rittenhouse in an episode released Tuesday, congratulations, good job for what he did, Rittenhouse replied, it's nothing to be congratulated for. Like, if I could go back, I wish I never would have had to take somebody's life, adding that it was probably not the best idea to go down there, referring to the Kenosha rioting. He went to armed with a semi-automatic rifle. Says that's the appropriate attitude. If you're put in a position where you have to take someone else's life to save your own, you do it. You're entitled. But you don't do a grave dance afterward. That smells more like vigilantism than self-defense. Now, fast forward a month, and here's where things stand in the personal evolution of Kyle Rittenhouse, reluctant symbol. And apparently headlines now come out says rock star Kyle Rittenhouse is greeted with pyrotechnics and a standing ovation on stage at Turning Point USA's America Fest event. Warns biased liberal media to be on the lookout for a lawsuit against them. It says if you think the Daily Mail headline must be exaggerating, think again. And here we get to Elix Michelson via Twitter saying, Kyle Rittenhouse gets a rock star reception at the Turning Point USA event in Arizona. The teen was found not guilty of criminal charges. And he says now he's seen as a hero by some activists on the right. So apparently this was from over the weekend. So anyway, yeah, that's going on. And it says there are only a few political figures I can imagine getting a reception that raucous at a conservative event. Donald Trump is one, Mike Flynn is another, a group of insurrectionists from January 6th would, and Kyle Rittenhouse would and has. The through line among all four is that they're symbols of using force to subjugate your political enemies. Trump instigated the Stop the Steal effort to overturn the election that led to the attack on the Capitol. Flynn called for the martial law and has spoken warmly of a military coup. Rittenhouse shot 3 leftists during a riot. Not one of them has anything meaningful to say about policy or conservative ideology. This isn't CPAC 1981, rising to its feet to welcome Ronald Reagan as he recites the evils of collectivism and the virtues of individual liberty. This is Trump running through his personal enemies list or Rittenhouse getting a standing O for killing some people who needed killing, according to the right. Tomi Lahren has catered to populists for her entire career, but even she can't watch this spectacle and the incentives it's creating without feeling queasy. So apparently here's some of her piece here as of late.
All right, coming up, Kyle Rittenhouse, treated like a rock star here at Turning Point USA America Fest. Trust me, I'm hearing it left and right here in the hallway. Why the young man is saying the media is still getting the facts of his case wrong as he heads that legal action.
So apparently that's Tomi Lahren. Yes, Tomi Lahren says to pump the brakes when it comes to celebrating Kyle Rittenhouse. I think we should step back a little bit and maybe not treat him like he is a rock star or a celebrity. That is not necessarily a good look for the conservative movement. So the last message the right or anyone should send is that this is a ticket to fame and adulation. David French tweeted about the adulation of Rittenhouse. But that is the message by design. Kill a few leftists and get away with it, and you too might find yourself feted by conservative media celebrities and invited to lunch by ex-presidents. I'm not sure Ron Filipkowski is wrong about this, frankly. It says, how long before the Kyle Rittenhouse endorsement becomes more coveted by Republican candidates than Trump's? Sure, Trump is the MAGA Pope, but he's never literally ended a liberal's life, has he? I wonder what the political reception would have been for Rittenhouse if, instead of shooting 3 people during confrontations in close quarters, he had sniped at them from the roof of a nearby building. The self-defense case evaporates in those circumstances, obviously, but he'd still have a case that he was defending the lives of property of others during the chaos of a riot. He'd be on shakier legal ground, but my guess is that he'd still be every inch the Republican rock star, especially if he, quote, beat the system, end quote, by getting acquitted. The key to his celebrity doesn't lie in the concept of self-defense, after all. It lies in his willingness to use lethal force to defeat the enemies of law and order. Whether that force was used to defend his life or not is largely academic, at least as a political matter. I'll leave you with this. A product of the same violence-curious subculture that treats Rittenhouse like a hero. And apparently, we'll watch this little snippet out of Clown News. Says this is so sinister.
Pivot to the ongoing outrage in Washington right now over Congresswoman Lauren Boebert.
Representative Boebert should be stripped of her committees.
Lauren Boebert, who proudly displayed her ignorance and bigotry.
Islamophobic, race-baiting, violence, inciting, white supremacists.
Yes, guns in the Zoom background, lady.
Punish and sanction
Boebert.
Crazy Boebert or Babbert or whatever her name is.
Extremists like the Lauren Boebert.
If anyone's dangerous, it's Lauren Boebert.
Boebert is a bigot.
Racist, Islamophobic,
Fascist. Insurrectionist.
Complete lunatic.
Nut job.
Well, that's one way to put it. So anyway, I cannot necessarily say I disagree at this point. I don't know that it should be celebrated. I don't think it's worthy of a raucous crowd giving a standing ovation, given what transpired. Was justice served in that? I do believe that it was. I think the wrong was righted, certainly. However, what I think really needs to happen, and I think this is going to come out, is that the media needs to be held to account for the lies and the misinformation and disinformation and propaganda that they not only pushed out at the time, but continue to push out. And it's not going to be unless and until we put a stop to these idiots from continuing to go over the airwaves and spout this crap or pull the frickin' plug on them. It's not going to stop. So anyway, enough on that for the moment. Flashing over to Epoch Times here. Indiana educator who blew whistle on CRT says he has been fired. And of course, probably should not necessarily be a big surprise, as that's typically what happens for whistleblowers who go against and buck the system. But Tony Kinnett, an Indianapolis-based educator who went viral on social media for exposing how critical race theory is being implemented in his school district, said he's been fired. In a Twitter thread, the award-winning science coach reported that he no longer works with the Indianapolis Public Schools, Indiana's largest school district serving about 23,000 students. According to Kinnett, IPS fired him for a host of reasons, mostly relating to information he leaked to journalists about the district's social and racial justice initiatives. One of the two journalists mentioned in the thread is Daily Caller's Kendall Teets, with whom Kinnett shared a video recording of an online session of Racial Justice Speaker Series at an IPS middle school. The video featured IPS Racial Equity Director Patricia Payne, who told students that they live in a racially constructed society where Black people internalize racism. When you internalize racism, you start thinking that you are less than, just like everybody else does, Payne said in the video. I won't say everybody, but way too many people think that just because you have black skin, you must be dumber. You don't care about education and all of these different negative stereotypes. In another video, Kinnett shared to Teets, a group of 4 Black Lives Matter activists lectured students at an IPS elementary middle school about white supremacy and capitalism. One of the women said the criminal justice system is designed in a way that Black, brown, or poor people are more likely to be jailed for these things, to be enslaved, imprisoned for these things that a lot of people do. Kinnett said another reason he was fired is that he allegedly impaired efficiency and effectiveness, whatever that means, within his department and across the district. Kinnett previously reported that IPS required him to work from home because staff developed clinical anxiety over working with him. The district eventually revoked his access to school grounds. My God, the level of SJW BS on this is thick, folks. Says, yes, I suppose whistleblowing the actions of IPS would impair their ability to lie to parents about it, he wrote. A longtime critic of progressive activism and K-12 education, Kinnett recently gained widespread attention after he pushed back against the narrative that CRT isn't being taught in schools, urging concerned parents to keep looking for its presence. When we tell you that our schools aren't teaching critical race theory, that's it. That it's nowhere in our standards, that's misdirection, Kinnett said in a November 4th video on Twitter. The video, which he posted alongside internal IPS files about CRT training, has been shared over 6,500 times since then. Says, I'm in dozens of classrooms a week, so I see exactly what we're teaching our students, he said. noting that while the schools don't have the quotes and theories as state standards, the teachers are incorporating the concepts of CRT into their teaching of a variety of subjects, such as math, history, science, English, and the arts. Canet's whistleblowing comes amid a heated debate over the influence of CRT in American schools. An outgrowth of Marxism, CRT interprets society through a Marxist dichotomy between oppressors and oppressed, but replacing the class categories with racial identity groups. Proponents of CRT see deeply embedded racism in all aspects of American society, including in neutral systems such as constitutional law and standardized tests, and deem it to be the root cause of racial inequity or different outcomes for different races. In response to the Epoch Times request for comment, an IPS spokesperson said the district does not discuss personal matters. Shocker, right? So it just goes to show you that for doing good and exposing things, whether you go to Project Veritas, blow it up on Twitter or otherwise, well, you can expect a little blowback. And so be it. I mean, these snakes, these cucarachas, the funny thing is when these deeds are exposed into the light from the darkness, they freak out. They don't know what to do. And so they lash out like a cornered dog. And that's exactly what they are cornered dogs at this point. And we'll continue to expose them at every opportunity. And I would encourage you folks to do the same. That being said, another interesting bit out of human events here. NBC News acts as megaphone for child sex change advocacy group. Piece by Celine Ryan Siccio here today says, to tell the truth in human events, news, press analysis series. These stories will focus on news being reported by either the New York Times, the Washington Post, ABC News, NBC News, or CBS News, despite 24-hour cable broadcasts and an untold number of internet services. These established mainstream platforms continue to influence a majority of American citizens and their political opinions. The quote-unquote news generated by these press outlets is better regarded as opinion, crafted in a way designed to discourage skepticism and critical thought on the part of the audience. To tell the truth will be Human Events News' periodic effort to help address this bias and restore the skepticism necessary on the part of all Americans to maintain a free society. So the piece says, rather than find information themselves, today's quote-unquote journalists often depend on readily available information from others. Aside from journalists who publishes information, special interest groups, political activists, and advocacy organizations, much of what groups like this do involves publishing information that fits their agendas. This is normal, understandable, and sometimes even noble, but it isn't objective information. Take, for example, the following recent headline from NBC News. Hormone therapy linked to lower suicide risk for trans youths, study finds. Now, advocates say the research highlights the dangerous effect of recent legislative efforts to ban gender-affirming medical care for transgender minors, reported NBC. But these quote-unquote advocates NBC references are just members of the organization that put out the study in question, grading their own paper. Gender-affirming hormone therapy is strongly linked to a lower risk of suicide and depression for transgender youths, according to the first large-scale study to examine the issue, reads a report, citing a recent entry into the Journal of Adolescent Health, based on an online survey conducted last year by an organization called the Trevor Project, which NBC identifies as only an LGBTQ youth suicide prevention and crisis intervention group. Never mind the questions raised by the fact that the Journal of Adolescent Health would publish a study based on an online survey conducted only among 13 to 24-year-olds who currently identified as transgender or non-binary. Even more notable is the fact that the NBC calls an LGBTQ youth suicide prevention and crisis Intervention Group is a transgender policy advocacy group that proudly states that it seeks to change hearts, minds, and laws in favor of its progressive agenda. In particular, the Trevor Project seeks to help young people attain what it calls gender-affirming healthcare. The Trevor Project carefully defines this as treatments that postpone physical changes, as well as treatments that lead to changes that would affirm one's gender identity. But the term is commonly used to describe puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and sex change operations. Consider that this sample group automatically excludes any individuals who would have received such therapy but no longer consider themselves transgender. It says, in addition to providing a crisis hotline to LGBTQ youth, the group publishes resource guides like Understanding Gender Identities, which explains that, unfortunately, trans people often face hatred or fear just because of who they are, and that even some LGBT people may have transphobic feelings that can make it harder for them to support transgender people as they also fight for equality and acceptance. Another Trevor Project guide, titled A Guide to Being an Ally to Transgender and Non-Binary Youth, explains that someone's sex characteristics are their personal information, and you do not need to know someone's sex assigned at birth to be respectful of their gender identity. Said that when someone shares their gender identity with you, it's inappropriate to assume or try to deduce that person's sex assigned at birth. Rather, believe others when they share their gender identity with you and support them. Now, the website for the Trevor Project alerts first-time visitors of its quick exit feature so that young people, quote unquote, browsing the site can press their escape key 3 times to quickly navigate away, presumably to keep their parents or other concerned adults from noticing their browsing behavior. To weigh in on the information presented by the Trevor Project that happens to bolster and reaffirm the premise of the organization, NBC consults the Emmett Paley, CEO of the Trevor Project. Says it's clear that gender-affirming care has a potential to reduce rates of depression and suicide attempts while banning this vital care and exposing young people to harmful political rhetoric can cause real harm. Emmett Paley, CEO and Executive Director of the Trevor Project, said in a statement, "It's critical that all transgender and non-binary youth across the country have access to medical care that is affirming, patient-centered, and evidence-based." And I guess I'm going to pause right there for a bit that kind of caught my eye in the reading of that first statement there. Exposing young people to harmful political rhetoric can cause real harm. Now, for those of you who might have been with me on Saturday night on the fireside chat, will remember that I went through a piece that American Thinker had talking about the reshaping and redefining of some of these terms in that, whether it be vaxxed or whether it be what it means to be fully vaxxed and various other terms. One of which is the fact that I don't remember the term or terminology that was described in there, other than the fact that one can now be harmed by words. And so that's what they're alluding to here. Apparently, harm no longer is just something that, can be physically done. You go beat the crap out of somebody or yank their hair or whatever. No, words now hurt, right? Anyway, and Amy Green, Vice President of Research at the Trevor Project, who said the following: "This study emphasizes the potential benefits of gender-affirming hormone therapy as a mechanism to reduce feelings of gender dysphoria and minority stress among transgender and non-binary youth, thereby working to improve mental health outcomes and prevent suicide. These data should serve as a call to action to resist blanket bans on gender-affirming medical care and to invest in more research on this topic so that youth and their families can make evidence-informed decisions regarding care." NBC goes on to adopt the project's advocacy language, explaining that more than 20 states have considered bills aiming to ban gender-affirming healthcare for transgender minors this year alone. Only Arkansas has passed a law completely banning access to gender-affirming health care, including puberty blockers and hormones for trans minors. But a judge blocked that law from taking effect in July, pending the outcome of litigation. NBC continues. Tennessee enacted a more limited law that bans doctors from providing gender-affirming hormone treatment and surgery in prepubescent minors. Immediately after characterizing these laws as targeting trans minors and hormone treatment that is gender-affirming, NBC goes on to conflate the issue with cancer treatments and menopause mitigation, suggesting via juxtaposition that these treatments are also at risk. Now, some transgender and non-binary people receive hormone therapy, which can include hormones such as estrogen, testosterone, and other medications, to align their appearance and secondary sex characteristics with their gender identity. Hormone therapy is also used to treat many other conditions and illnesses, including cancer, precocious puberty, and the symptoms of menopause. So bottom line here, I'm going to pause there, I think. What the heck, we'll finish it up. Only a couple more paragraphs, but says though more research is finding that access to gender-affirming healthcare, such as puberty blockers and hormone therapy, is beneficial to trans youth's mental health and overall well-being, not all who want it are able to access it, reports NBC, before suggesting that parents need to support their children's desire to physically alter their secondary sexual characteristics, lest they be led to kill themselves, noting that this access is greatly dependent on whether a youth has parental support. Now, as a footnote to the article, buried at the bottom of the page, NBC News is forced to acknowledge that half of the Trevor Project's online survey respondents said they were not receiving gender-affirming hormone therapy, but would like to, and 14% were already receiving it. The remaining 36% identified as either transgender or non-binary, but with no interest in hormone therapy. To tell the truth, as the institution of journalism deteriorates into unchecked blog posts and big newsroom aggregation quotas, the forums the Americans turn to for information become the liberal mouthpieces of progressive advocacy groups who spoon-fed them talking points and information. The Trevor Project aims to usher in a world of more children with mastectomies and artificially stunted growth. And their communication teams know that reporters like Yurkaba want progressive-aligned content to package as news. Package together and publish some figures from a narrowly targeted online quote-unquote survey, alongside some compelling quotations, and the Trevor Project has succeeded in dressing up its own press release into an NBC News report. So there you have it. Things to be aware of, I suppose. These advocacy groups, think tanks, and the like masquerading as news outlets that get picked up by the Mockingbird media, made into news, as it were. And bottom line, read the fine print. Hopefully some of these outlets do their due diligence, whether they report it or otherwise. But like this article suggests, they put it in fine print down at the bottom and says, oh, here's the real numbers behind this. So got to look for that as well. Not to be outdone here, out of Law Enforcement Today, says police say viral high school hijab incident was yet another hate crime hoax and all a lie. So this apparently is another Smollett, I guess. This out of Fairfax, Virginia. Another day, another hate crime hoax. The latest incident took place in Fairfax, Virginia, where a physical altercation between Fairfax high school students led to claims of an anti-Muslim racist hate crime. The problem is, according to the Fairfax Police Department, that never happened. The Post-Millennial reports the December 14th incident, which sparked CARE-backed student protests, led to initial claims from a student, Ekran Mohammed, that she was called racist slurs, was pushed by two male classmates, and had her hijab pulled, which exposed her hair. An Instagram video posted a few days ago by a woman who said she was Mohammed's aunt and had her describe the incident, saying that her niece was in a monthly marketing class meeting when an Egyptian male student drew the Islamic flag and put a cross on it, like a red cross, like an X, she said. So apparently this must be the Instagram in question. I'll see if this plays. Oh, that's 18 minutes. Yeah, we'll skip that part, I suppose. Nonetheless, says she said that the male then specifically looked at her niece and two female friends, also Muslims. After class ended, Muhammad walked to see a friend, at which time her backpack accidentally struck a male student. At that point, the male's friends told him Muhammad said he was ugly and little. At that point, the male student allegedly tried to grab Muhammad's hijab from the back, she said. She turned around, grabbed his hair, and punched him in the stomach. Now, Muhammad said the male student then threw her into a desk, which resulted in bruising to her left side. After that, paramedics were called to the school because Muhammad collapsed on the floor because she claimed she couldn't breathe. Paramedics were dispatched for what the school claimed was a panic attack. After the incident, Fairfax police opened an investigation into the incident with the usual suspects, so-called advocacy groups such as CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, calling for a probe into what they referred to as a hate crime at the school. And apparently here's old CARE National sticking her nose into things, as a female Muslim student at Fairfax High School in Virginia was reportedly assaulted by a male student who has faced no repercussions. We call on law enforcement to immediately launch a hashtag hate crime probe into this incident. Hashtag Islamophobia. And before I go on, just like the Smollett case, wouldn't you know? Think back here for a second, folks. You remember what was going on in Congress just before Smollett had his little hate crime hoax play out in Chicago? Any of you guys care to guess who was pushing some bits of legislation? Anyone? Any takers? Oh, would that have been people like Kamala Harris and perhaps Cory Booker? They were looking to get some anti-lynching legislation passed, right? Interesting. Now, think to this situation that just apparently recently played out. Do you recall what was going on in Congress outside of the shenanigans of the Build Back Better agenda while everybody was focused on that? Aha, Kimberly has headed down that path. Omar, absolutely. Guess what Ilhan Omar was in the midst of doing here just barely a week before all of this stuff came about? Anti-Islamophobia stuff. And then all of a sudden, right on cue, like clockwork, voila, here comes a little hate crime. You see how this works, folks? Every time one of these incidents comes up, scale back about a week or so. Pay attention to what your quote-unquote politicians or pretend representatives are doing in Congress and the sort of legislation and that they're trying to pass behind the scenes. Same playbook. Exactly. It says on cue, other left-wing advocacy groups got involved, including the Pride Liberation Project and FCPS Pride. It is unknown if the Muhammad is part of the Alphabet Coalition.
Thank you. 6:31, and we are following another issue in the classroom this morning. CARE, or the Council on American Islamic Relations, is calling for a hate crime investigation at Fairfax High School. A Muslim student there says she was assaulted because of her religion. The student says she was knocked down and had her hijab taken off. Well, just hours ago, 7 News cameras captured hundreds of students walking out in support for her and to protest the school's handling of the situation.
Physically, my whole left side of my body is bruised. Mentally, I'm okay because I have all the support around me today.
And that student has an ally on the school board. Virginia's only elected official who wears a hijab spoke out about this case just hours ago at the Fairfax County School Board's latest meeting.
Something that I remember experiencing myself in FCPS. But of course, you know, we recognize our realities. We know that there are many challenges and that we have to continue working past them.
And in a statement, Fairfax County Schools tell 7 News on your side it is still gathering information on this situation, and it can't share more details. Of course, we will update you on any new developments.
Sure, you will. Or maybe we'll just help push this little agenda along for CARE and everybody else. But hey, dear Fairfax Police Department, little heads up for you. Maybe you might want to consider opening up her cell phone and let's see who she was talking to. Perhaps maybe we might find some politicians or people connected to politicians that might have been keen on getting some legislation passed that may have been of benefit. Shall we take a look at that? I don't know, just a thought. Anybody who might be living close to Fairfax, maybe send them this link here today. In a press release, the Fairfax Police Department debunked the claim of a hate crime, says a police investigation determined a physical altercation between 2 Fairfax high school students was not a hate crime. The investigation revealed there were no racial comments made by either student. The female student confirmed her hijab became partially undone during the altercation, exposing her hair. The female student advised that the information posted on several social media websites stating that racial comments were used during the altercation were false. And here's the purported hate crime that was posted by CARE and by hundreds of students who their groomers said made them proud by skipping school to protest was, of course, a hoax. 19,000 signed a petition. It says while police determined there was no hate crime basis to the incident, their investigation continues. That matters not to the grievance mob, however. After the altercation, a petition was circulated urging for accountability on the school's behalf. As a victim forever has this moment engraved in her mind, someone has already returned to school with no consequences. This is not right. This should never have happened, and the school is covering this up. As you sign this petition, we plan to show whoever we can that in the school needs to take accountability for this disgusting incident. We plan on doing whatever we can to get justice and make our schools feel safe again. Of course, as a publication, nearly 32,000 people have signed the petition, all for a hoax, mind you. Now, last Thursday, hundreds of students walked out of the school in protest. The district told WTOP that around 8:10 a.m., some 350 students, quote-unquote, exercised their right to protest following an incident between 2 students that took place in school on Tuesday afternoon. Fairfax County Public Schools and the City of Fairfax Schools support the right of students to peacefully protest, end quote. No word yet on if they take into consideration that the hoax side of thing gives them right to do so as well. Unless, of course, perhaps maybe the school is in on it. You know, there could be that angle as well. So, moving on. Biden's State Department is paving the way for Iran to get nukes. And what do? Of course, they cannot seem to get Trump out of their heads. These poor bastards got DJT syndrome so bad. It's impossible for them not to bring up Trump in any situation. And so we get this out of PJ Media here. It says, in the course of a lengthy briefing by quote-unquote senior administration officials, end quote, regarding National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan's upcoming trip to Israel and the Palestinian Authority, the topic of Iran and its nuclear ambitions came up again and again. Biden's handlers reiterated that they were determined not to allow the Islamic Republic of Iran to get nuclear weapons, but at the same time maintained that they were intent on bringing the mullahs back into the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. Barack Obama's disastrous nuclear deal that paved the way for the rogue Iranian regime to get nukes. Iran said the unnamed official who is conducting the briefing will be very high on the agenda for Jake's visit to Israel this week. The discussion will be a continuation of our ongoing consultations on the threat posed by Iran, particularly its nuclear program, but also its destabilizing activities in the region. We share with our Israeli partners a deep concern about the advancement in Iran's nuclear program. Iran's nuclear program, Biden's handlers would have you believe, is all Trump's fault. Following the previous administration's withdrawal from the JCPOA, without much thought or plan as to what would come next, And we've just seen this dramatic acceleration of Iran's nuclear program since then. The US and Israel are totally aligned in our determination to ensure Iran can never acquire a nuclear weapon. He repeated this several times during the call, discussing the real dangers that it's a danger to not just Israel, but danger to the entire international security of Iran's rapidly advancing and accelerating nuclear program. We are, I think, both committed to ensuring that Iran, as I mentioned, totally aligned on the fact that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Says that sounds great, but re-entering Obama's awful JCPOA is exactly the wrong way to go about it. The Complete Infidel's Guide to Iran explains that among many other disquieting features, the JCPOA allows Iran to delay International Atomic Energy Agency inspection requests for up to 24 days, ample time to clean up for the inspectors. The agreement also removes all economic sanctions on Iran. This includes the removal of sanctions that had originally been intended to be removed only when Iran definitively gave up its nuclear program. Now, the Islamic Republic would be given sanctions relief and allowed to continue its nuclear program, only with certain restrictions that would all eventually expire anyway. Sanctions relief allows the Iranian mullahs to finance jihad groups worldwide, as they did with the billions Obama gave them. Yeah, all the plane loads in the middle of the night with unmarked currency. Yeah, who can ever forget the 3 pallets that left unmarked? Where did those go? To whom? And why? On September 23rd, 2015, 2 months after the nuke deal was finalized, Khamenei published an article entitled, "The Idols Will Be Shattered," illustrated with a drawing of the Statue of Liberty shattered in pieces. In it, he declared, "The idol of the soul, the idol of pride, and the idol of sexual lust, the idol of tyranny and subservience, the idol of global tyranny, that is, the U.S., the idol of sloth and irresponsibility, and the other idols that shame the precious human soul, a plan that will spring forth from the depths of the heart will shatter them." That doesn't exactly sound as if the JCPOA was a path to peaceful coexistence. But as far as the senior administration official who conducted Monday's briefing was concerned, it was all Trump's fault. I think it's important to keep in mind something happened in 2019. The former administration pulled out of the JCPOA. They engaged in a maximum pressure campaign, and I think anyone who has dealt with the Iranians for some time would have predicted that Iran will react, and they did react. And one of the ways they reacted was attacking Saudi Arabia and others in the Gulf. Direct state-to-state attacks. And not only did the United States not respond, the president at the time tweeted that we shouldn't really be in the Middle East at all. Says this is remarkably disingenuous, even coming from an entity so habitually dishonest as the Biden administration. The official is trying to give the impression that Trump's policies led an Iranian regime that had been pacified to become aggressive. Biden's handlers are hoping he'll forget that Iran detained and publicly humiliated 10 American sailors in January 2016, just as the JCPOA was going into effect. The idea that Trump's withdrawal from the JCPOA ratcheted up tensions, or caused tensions where there were none, and that's pure propaganda. The administration official said it again at the end of the briefing. Iran can never get a nuclear weapon. Yet everything it is doing is only enabling the Islamic Republic to get such weapons while trying to gaslight you into thinking that the fault lies entirely with the previous administration. Biden's handlers are playing an extremely dangerous game. Let's hope for the sake of all of us that it doesn't blow up in their faces. And mind you, this whole negotiation, if you will, with the JCPOA, Iran, and of course you've got Israel on the sidelines, obviously trying to prevent the JCPOA negotiations from taking place or any sort of deal being reached. Number one, personally, we shouldn't be there. I would agree that Trump basically pulled us out and says, you guys deal with your own affairs, not our business. And that's probably the right approach. But now that the talks are back on again, off again, as things transition to Biden and his folks, it's been fairly shaky over the course of the last 8-10 months. And you got Israel on the side, obviously trying to prevent said talks by various interjections and interventions and things of that nature. You know, they just had a bombing campaign in Syria. Who's in Syria? Well, Iranian troops and whatnot going on there. Then here, even today, we find out well after the fact that Israel was indeed providing assistance with the Soleimani assassination that took place underneath Trump. Why would they do that now, if not to cause strife and perhaps throw off the talks at all? So again, it is a bit of a dangerous game, could blow up in all of their faces, quite frankly, but nonetheless something to keep an eye on. So aside from that here today, flashing back stateside, Judicial Watch has got this piece out and are announcing a press conference on lawsuit challenging Maryland's gerrymander. So, you know, we've talked quite a bit about many of the states and election integrity. Obviously, lots going on in Arizona, or had been going on, still waiting to see the outcome of where that may go. In the meantime, we got stuff going on in Michigan. We got stuff going on in Colorado. We got stuff going on in Georgia, Pennsylvania. Now we can throw Maryland into the mix as well. And out of Judicial Watch says, they announced that a press conference will be held today regarding the lawsuit it filed on behalf of 12 registered Maryland voters who object to Maryland's 2021 congressional redistricting plan on the grounds that it diminishes their rights to participate in elections for the U.S. Congress on an equal basis with other Maryland voters, which is in violation of the Maryland Constitution. And that is brought forth through Parrott et al. Versus Lamone et al. And there's the docket number. The event is open to the press and the public. Took place today, 12:30 p.m., City Hall, Frederick, Maryland. Says delegate and lead plaintiff Neil Parrott is hosting the event. Judicial Watch senior attorney Robert Popper, who is director of its election law efforts, will also be in attendance. Unfortunately, Dems in the legislature went beyond politics and into abuse of power and setting up Maryland's gerrymandered congressional maps, stated Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. This lawsuit seeks to protect the rights of all voters and citizens. Simply put, politicians shouldn't get to pick their voters. And the lawsuit details. Mind you, this takes place all over the country. I'm sure that Maryland is not the only state where you get these ridiculous gerrymandered districts where they cherry pick neighborhoods and everything else to benefit them. Depending on which party, doesn't really matter, Democrat or Republican. It happens between the two parties, regardless of who is in power at the time. Why don't they just go back to the days of, squared off, here's what it is, winner take all type scenarios. Get out, and if you want to try and win the doggone seat, then you better get out on the streets and make it happen. Win over the hearts and minds rather than cherry pick your stinking voting electorate. Maryland's recent history of partisan gerrymandering is no secret. Its 2011 congressional district map remains one of the most notorious partisan gerrymanders in U.S. history. A federal district judge openly doubted that it could provide fair and effective representation for all citizens. Another called it absurd to suggest that there is a community of interest and a district described as a Rorschach-like eyesore. A federal appeals court famously described the same district as a broken-winged pterodactyl lying prostrate across the center of the state. Now, the lawsuit relates that a bipartisan commission recommended a map to Maryland Governor Larry Hogan on November 5th that he approved. But the legislature passed a different proposal in a straight party line vote. And on December 9th of this year, Hogan vetoed this proposal, and the same day, the state legislature overrode his veto on another party line vote. Judicial Watch's suit points out that the new map is similar to the gerrymandered map that was the subject of universal abuse 10 years ago as the worst gerrymander in the country. The lawsuit details how the map distorts district lines, deviates from and crosses existing political boundaries, and fractures and divides communities of interest. Maryland's plan splits Anne Arundel County into 3 congressional districts. The middle of Anne Arundel County is connected to the Eastern Shore's 1st congressional district. The 2 areas are held together solely via the Chesapeake Bay Bridge. Baltimore is divided among 3 congressional districts. Montgomery County is divided among 4 congressional districts. A roughly 20-mile trip north on the Baltimore-Washington Parkway from Cheverly, Maryland, a D.C. suburb, to Jessup, Maryland, an area outside BWI Airport, would cross congressional boundaries 6 times and lead a traveler through 5 different congressional districts. Now, the lawsuit highlights how Maryland's 5th district features an umbilical cord designed to include Democratic voters in College Park to counterbalance the more Republican voters in the southern part of the state. And the 6th congressional district connects Garrett County, the westernmost rural county which borders Pennsylvania and West Virginia, with Potomac, Maryland, a wealthy D.C. suburb. As a federal court commented about the 6th district in 2011, which made a similar linkage between these populations, it brings together voters, quote, who have an interest in farming, mining, tourism, paper production, and the hunting of bears, with voters who abhor the hunting of bears and do not know what a coal mine or paper mill even looks like, end quote. These 2 groups have different climates, root for different sports teams, and read different newspapers. Now, outside experts agree the plan is flawed, with the nonpartisan Princeton gerrymandering project giving it a grade of F for fairness and geographic compactness. Well, sorry to tell you guys, but D's and F's are now outlawed, at least in California, so the best that they can do is probably a C, maybe a C minus. But I digress. In 2020, Republicans accounted for approximately 35% of Maryland's congressional votes, but they are unlikely to win even a single seat under this plan. This outcome wouldn't be possible without political gerrymandering. A Judicial Watch argues that the plan violates Article 7 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights, which guarantees voters the rights to free and frequent elections and the right of suffrage. Article 7 has been held to be even more protective of rights of political participation than the provisions of the federal Constitution. Additionally, the plan violates Article 3, Section 4 of the Maryland Constitution, which provides each legislative district shall consist of adjoining territory, be compact in form, and of substantially equal population. Due regard shall be given to natural boundaries and the boundaries of political subdivisions. Now, Judicial Watch is being assisted in the lawsuit by William J. Holtzinger, Esquire of Frederick, Maryland. So there you have it. Efforts ongoing, a lot of redistricting going on. You can bet your bottom dollar that the Dems, because they were not able to get Senate Bill 1, House Resolution 1, things of that nature at the federal level for codifying into law their shenanigans that played out back in November of last year, that the states are getting smart. The states are getting smart and figuring out that, hey, we need to take control of these redistricting efforts, probably put them in independent bodies. And not only that, the states are enacting a lot of election integrity measures that are not exactly beneficial to them. If you're with me on the broadcast this morning, I talked a little about Stacey Abrams and her plans to run down in Georgia. And she's running into some potential roadblocks and that might give her pause. And hence she is really knocking on the door in Congress saying, hey, when are you going to get this voter registration, election integrity business done at the federal level? And even if they do, so what? It's a states' right issue. It would never fly. Now, granted, they hope that you won't notice. And of course, I'm sure it'll be a measure that will, if it were enacted, mind you, would make its way to the Supreme Court. So Nonetheless, aside from that, let's see here. One other piece. Joe Altman suggests Jovan Pulitzer and himself may have been poisoned with anthrax. I hadn't heard about this effort, but obviously many of us know that Pulitzer has been very active in looking at ballots from the November election last year. 13 months removed now, the effort's still ongoing, revelations still being made. Do you honestly believe that there wouldn't be an effort to knock some of these experts off and just get them to flat out shut up? I guarantee you that that's happening. So it says election fraud activist Joe Altman has suggested that kinematic artifact expert Jovan Pulitzer and himself may have been poisoned by anthrax in an effort to prevent election fraud evidence from getting to the general public. Creative Destruction Media's L. Todd Wood was interviewed on Altman's podcast earlier this week, and he was sick with coughing and other symptoms, which could be associated with anthrax inhalation. You can see the podcast at the bottom of this article. Read the post from Altman's Telegram channel below. But it says, in an effort to be clear and transparent, I don't know if it is anthrax, some other derivative, or a spike protein. I was just told by a doctor the symptoms are similar. Now, what I do know is Jovan is sick. I have been sick, yet not near as bad as him. He has all the signs of some sort of anthrax or derivative. I asked him to go get tested, and he agreed. What is a God thing if it turns out to be anthrax? It says, I was on antibiotics that are used to treat anthrax for the 2 weeks prior because my leg was impaled with a metal object in an accident in my brother's garage. So although I have been really sick, the symptoms did not include lesions and some of the other things Jovan is facing. Pray for Jovan. Pray for any others who may have gotten sick. Let's hope it is not anthrax. If it is, the rules would have changed for the radical elements in our country, from denying the truth to doing whatever it takes to make sure the truth does not survive. So, yeah, I had not heard about this. I do know that here, probably in the last, perhaps week or so, we had seen, I think Jovan had a piece out here talking more, let's see, what was it on? Georgia still? I can't remember which now. It kind of all blends together. But nonetheless, if this is indeed taking place, again, do indeed pray for these folks that are exposing the truth. They're putting themselves right out there for all to see. Best place to hide is in plain view, my opinion. And I would tend to agree that most of these folks are doing just that. But we got to recognize the war that we're in, folks. At the end of the day, this is not just a physical war. Very much a spiritual war taking place, and the enemy would like nothing more than to keep the stuff that we talk about here on this channel, many others that you follow, from ever hitting the light, and the masses at large. So, aside from that, let's see, I got a whole other pile of stuff in regards to Fauci and coronavirus related stuff here. Apparently, this piece came out. Fauci says Fox's Waters should be fired for a kill shot comment, and the network fires back. So I don't know what all was said here. I don't really pay attention to Fox News all that much, but this piece out of Just the News here from John Solomon says Dr. Anthony Fauci is calling on the Fox News channel to fire network host Jesse Waters for soliciting attendees of a recent event to stage a video ambush on President Biden's top medical advisor, in which he also used the words kill shot, and boom, he's dead. Now, Waters made the comment Monday on stage at a conservative political conference, according to the Washington Compost. Now, you go in for the kill shot, Waters said. The kill shot with an ambush? Deadly, because he doesn't see it coming. This is when you say, Dr. Fauci, you funded risky research at a sloppy Chinese lab, the same lab that sprung this pandemic on the world. You know why people don't trust you, don't you? The so-called ambush video is a surprise on the street interview with an unsuspecting person, while also telling potential takers of the offer to be respectful. Waters also appeared to entice them by saying, imagine Tucker Carlson teases that. Coming up, Brave college student confronts Lord Fauci at dinner. Exclusive footage. That's what we want. That changes the whole conversation of the country. And on Tuesday, Fauci, also the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, told Clown News, "That's horrible. That just is such a reflection of the craziness that goes on in society," also according to the Post. "The only thing that I have ever done throughout these 2 years is to encourage people to practice good public health practices. And for that, you have some guy out there saying that people should be giving me a kill shot to ambush me. I mean, what kind of craziness is there in society these days? Pot calling kettle black, folks." Fauci also called for Waters, who rose to fame on Fox News with such interviews, to be fired on the spot. The network later released a statement upon watching a video of the event and reading a transcript of it, saying Waters' words have been twisted completely out of context. The Post also reports. So imagine that. Clown News, Washington Compost, any of the other Mockingbird media folks twisting and contorting things, probably did a little cut up here, a little cut up there, and then of course painted it to their viewers, the 35 people who still watch them, and tried to twist things all into a knot. And of course they wheel out Mr. Science to get his reaction and spout his garbage out. And lo and behold, here we are. Nice little manufactured deal between Fauci and the media, as it were. So, that being said, let's see. It is the top of the hour here. I'll look to see if KB has indeed joined.
Greetings, Breaking.
Hey, I do hear you.
Are you hearing me clearly?
A little on the low side, but otherwise all right.
Okay, cool. I'm going to try a little something else.
Hey, there we go. Yep, there you go. That's a little better. How are things down your way today?
Quite interesting. I sent you one or two articles which have been talking about the so-called Omicron variant.
Yeah. It's all the buzz these days. I mean, everything is Omicron variant is a cause of everything from financials to cancellations for Christmas and, pretty much everything at this point.
And we aren't affected, which is quite interesting. There's been quite loud calls from certain sectors of the medical fraternity, which are basically saying that this is all big hype and nothing to be concerned about, which I agree with, by the way.
Yeah, but, even though, here's the thing, right? Even though South Africa has played a large part in the identification, if you will, of said variant, and we could debate that all day long on how they go about doing that or not. But think of how various countries and various actors net can use this to their advantage, right? It just so happened that on the 26th of November, day after Thanksgiving, voila, this thing falls right in her lap. How convenient, right? And think of all the things coming up over the course of, say, we got Christmas coming up here. We can't let Christians go to churches because, hey, this deadly variant is cycling around and we got to prevent them from traveling or potentially locking them down. Things of that nature can be used that way. And mind you, we also got this little midterm thing coming up here. So you think they might try and use this and stretch it out to their advantage yet again?
Of course they will. And indications are that they're trying to postpone all sorts of elections globally, whether it be in Europe or the UK or, in fact, pretty much everywhere that they can. Yeah, I mean, it's all bark, 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 and no bite.
Yeah, at least on your end. From our end, we got to contend with these idiots because, just like the very first time that this thing came out in 2020, they're going to try and push to do the same sort of crap. The problem is that the people have not pushed back hard enough on these jackasses, period. You got cities like Boston, you got cities like Chicago, and that thinking that, hey, we're gonna quietly sneak this little lockdown or partial lockdown measures, or lock them out of bars or pubs, eateries, you name it. And well, we'll just run it the same way we did the first time because we didn't get any resistance. The problem is that people aren't resisting hard enough against these fools.
Well, the majority of the public, I see it in the US, but in Europe, they're fighting back pretty hard. So
agreed.
I think it's a matter of time, but nonetheless, I would like to see a bit more resistance in the US, but I think that's really just a function of time. And once people start really getting affected, which they are starting to do, perhaps we may see a bigger fight. But the Europeans are going hammer and tongs. And I must be honest, I'm particularly proud of the Italians and the French for what they are doing. And it appears that they are putting some real fight, including the Austrians, I might add, who are probably at the facing the worst kind of repercussions for not wanting to take the jab. I mean, if you go and have a look at what's happening to the Austrians, it's actually inhumane.
Yep. Well, I don't know, KB, if it's playing out the same down your way or not, but here yesterday, President Biden hops up in front of the podium as usual, only a handful of days before Christmas, mind you, berates the American people about, the typical song and dance that they give. There was nothing really new that he stated. Wasn't anything, hey, wish you happy holidays, Merry Christmas, any of that cheer or anything along those lines. No, it's go get the jab, go get the jab, go get the jab. Hey, go get the jab, go get the jab, go get the jab, and hey, go get the jab. Right? That's pretty much, I just summarized his whole speech yesterday, including the questions Nat taken for 7 minutes with the press. But, then he also says, by the way, we're going to release 500 million test kits in that. Okay, well, that's fine and dandy. And even on the broadcast here this morning, I highlight the fact that around various cities, New York especially, you get these long lines of folks who are standing in line waiting to go get tested, right? And the question is, why? Why are people so easy to be compelled to go get these tests? Doesn't matter if they're free or not. Doesn't matter if you can't get them off a store shelf or not. People are still lining up like sheep to go get tested. We've never done this in history before for any other disease. Why are we doing it now?
I'm still fascinated. The pushback, though, is starting. I must be honest, it's the first time I've actually seen real pushback from South Africans who ordinarily, I would imagine, have been probably the most pathetic of everybody out there. But for once, I'm starting to see people saying, excuse me, this really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it not only doesn't make sense, but what they don't realize, and I talked a little bit about this perpetual wheel or the cycle that we're going to find ourselves in without any real way to jump off unless people wake up from their slumber. They strike the fear in you. They say, okay, well, we'll throw a dog a bone, right? Or put the carrot on the stick and say, here, we'll give you these free tests. Just go get tested. Okay. So people line up, they go get tested. Where do those numbers all go for all these various tests? Well, the media, of course. They pull them off the websites. The media says, oh, look at this. We've got all these cases. Not that you're sick, but cases. So this is a case-demic, right, at the onset. And so they whip up the fear. And of course, the government says, okay, well, because of all these cases, asymptomatic or not, you need to go get the jab to protect yourself or strike up some more fear. Well, you're going to lose your job, or like what the White House has on their website now. This is going to be a winter of discontent. You will surely die. Whip up that fear, go get the jab. Oh, things tend to calm down a little bit. calm down a little bit. Oh, time for another variant. Oh, you better go get tested. You see how the wheel continues to cycle around? And when are people going to recognize this?
Unfortunately, President Trump hasn't helped anything.
He is not.
I was really disappointed in his little talk. It just didn't make sense to me. Okay. I'm probably his most ardent supporter outside of the US, and I've always struggled with his attitude towards the jab, and this whole thing just really didn't make sense to me. In fact, if there was anything I was despondent about, was his reaction and his speech, because it really appalled me. You know.
Yeah.
I get it.
So here's two possible scenarios I want to run by you. And I've had just a little bit of time to think about this, and I want to see which one resonates with you more. So from the Trump perspective, right? You know, in the very early days, October, November timeframe last year, when he supposedly had the Rona, right? Went to Walter Reed, got Regeneron and a concoction of stuff. Boom, right back up within a couple of days, back to the White House, take the mask off, stand there, pump the fist in that from the balcony of the White House, almost as if an act of defiance in the face and in spite of the media, right? But then we find out he took the jab. Now here recently, there's reports that he's not only jabbed up, but taken a booster shot in that as well. And yet, through it all, they have all these rallies. People go to him. He starts talking about the jab. People either start booing him or leave, right? But yet there's still a great amount of support, and that's fine. So there's only two possible scenarios that I see playing out here. Number one, if indeed the devolution side of things is playing out behind the scenes, to which we're now up to part 14 per Patel Patriot, there's an element that has not yet been discussed as part of this devolution plan that somehow incorporates Big Pharma into this. And maybe Patel Patriot has not gotten down that path yet. I don't know. Perhaps maybe that is yet to be revealed. And if that is not the case, the only other logical conclusion one can reach is that Trump is in on it. That's the only two scenarios that I see. Have I missed anything?
No. I struggle to actually, I mean, I've given him a pass so often on this thing. I get it. I know that the likelihood of him being, I know that he had to do certain things to ensure that fewer people got killed. Yes, I get that. I buy into that theory. It makes a lot of sense to me. But at the same time, there's got to be a time where you've got to, as a logical person, say, okay, where does this end? I get it. He needed to do what he needed to do to possibly have fewer casualties. But I think, I'm not quite sure if it's his ego, what's getting in the way of it, common sense, ego, it doesn't make sense to me. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I think right now, probably losing a bit more patience with it. I noticed on Gab yesterday, there were a lot of comments that basically said STFU about the jab, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
Let it go.
Yeah, why does he continue to advocate and or bring it up during these rallies when he knows that it's a point of contention, right?
I mean, so, if you listen to yesterday, he was being booed, and I'm not quite sure if it's his ego or what it is. He basically, it's a small contingent in the corner, you know.
Small
Surely,
contingent, but you got to remember that these people are feeling pressured from all angles, right? You got the government, you got your employer potentially, and of course they're in tatters because they don't know which end is up because the courts have decided one way, put stays in place and upheld in other places, and so it's in limbo. You're playing with people's livelihoods here at the end of the day. And you're going to push people to their breaking point. They're either going to succumb or they're going to stand their ground. That's the only two choices you really have.
I love him. I think he's the best thing that ever happened to the world. It's one of the few times that I've actually believed in the fact that there's some leader out there who actually cares about people. But the more this continues, the more despondent I become. And I'm looking at this thing as objectively as I can because it's almost as if he's the last great hope. I do understand that we have to get up and fight for ourselves. I have no issue with that. But give it a rest. Please give this whole vax thing a rest.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And for those of you guys watching here, how many of you guys have actually read through all 14 parts of Devolution at this point? Put a 1 in chat if you've either listened to or read through Patel Patriot stuff. And yeah, let's do that. Just put a 1 in chat if you've read through it, and maybe there's an angle yet to come that we're missing, or perhaps that Patel Patriot has not talked about yet. Maybe we'll be in forthcoming pieces. I don't know how the pharma side of things ties into this. Because if he doesn't come out, and heck, I'm almost to the point where I'm ready to actually contact him and ask the question to say, hey, and all of your research into this, you know, where does this angle of big pharma come to play? You know, and I'm not necessarily sure in part 14 where Patel Patriot got into the what was the name of the other Substack and that he referenced? Kind of got on a little bit of a tangent there.
Slag.
Yeah. And I think it had to do with the, what was it, the alfalfa, what the alfalfa group or whatever the heck it was, the tie-ins there.
Yeah. Look, there's no doubt in my mind that there are things that are perhaps we've missed, right? And I was listening to Tien the other night, and he made a lot of sense. And Tien's actually one of the voices of reason. And even he was struggling, I feel, in trying to defend what was going on. And yes, I do know that there are much bigger games that are being played that are perhaps even beyond all of our imaginations. But there surely has to be a much more diplomatic, elegant way in handling this, other than the way that President Trump has handled it up to now.
Well, I don't disagree, but I think, you know, I think back on the 4 years and the Q stuff that had come out. What ultimately did that do for we the people? It wasn't that, hey, Trump is the leader here. He's going to show the way. He's going to make everything all right. And we're just going to have happy sailing and trails net thereafter. No, what he really did, and I think the thing that I always defer back to is his inauguration speech on January 20th, 2017, in the rain, where he said, today is a day we give the power back to the people. It doesn't belong in D.C. No, it belongs to you. And I tend to take that to heart.
Yes, I agree with you. It's the greatest speech, or it's the greatest inauguration speech that I've ever heard. And I was so appalled because I happened to be driving arguably along one of the greatest and most beautiful coastlines in the world. And I heard the local commentators calling it the worst, most aggressive, most disgusting. And I thought, am I living in a parallel universe? Because this is the greatest speech that I could have ever have imagined. And it made so much sense. So yes, I mean, I'm in complete sync with you. It was beautiful, and I do believe that it was meant in the spirit of reconciliation. I think it was meant to be unifying speech, which so many of the media didn't take it as. But for me, it was beautiful. And yeah, I agree with you. Perhaps, maybe I'm just a bit too jaded and have seen a little bit too much, more than I should have. But I've also read all 14 parts of Patel Patriot, and it makes sense to me. It really does. But I'm still not getting this whole vaccine thing.
Yeah. And I guess, when he made that statement, the takeaway that I got from that, as well as the Q stuff, and I see somebody says, taught us to be good researchers. Yeah, absolutely. Trust yourself. Don't trust the Mockingbird media. Don't take things at face value. Dig a little deeper, breach the surface of things and actually get to the root cause of things. Think logically through things. Don't believe the hype. Don't get all the emotion crap tied into this. But more importantly, back to what our founders originally intended was for self-governance. And it's incumbent upon us as we the people to take it upon ourselves and our responsibility to do so. It is not the responsibility of our representatives. Every time an issue comes up, we go crying and call into them in DC and say, fix our issue, or get a hold of some advocacy group or some think tank and say, hey, we need to make this happen or that happen. No. We can do that ourselves. We can do that ourselves at the local level. And the same is true of the presidency. He is far removed. At the end of the day, we got to think more locally. We got to become more interactive with the folks around us and getting things done. And don't worry so much about what goes on at the federal level. And I think if we can get that through our thick heads, I think things will be a lot better.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think you've got the most wonderful constitution, and you've got all the tools at your, there are so many tools available to you to actually take the power back. And I'm seeing that, and that encourages me, because we're seeing a real fight going on. Okay. Unfortunately, it appears that in the US, that fight is almost dragging its heels in many respects, but at least it's happening. There are good doctors out there, although I don't hold the medical fraternity in high esteem at all. But there are people fighting back. I'm seeing it at many levels. The critical race theory, I'm seeing those wonderful mama bears giving a good go. I'm seeing good people fighting the election fraud. I'm seeing at so many levels the fight is happening. And yes, I think perhaps those of us who've been in this for a long time are a little tired, and maybe we do need a little rest. And it's more positive than negative is my ultimate point.
Yeah, I would like to believe that. And perhaps maybe part of that refreshment, the holidays are upon us here. Maybe that'll renew our spirits a little bit, kind of center us around the reason why we celebrate the season that we do, the reason they want to see that go by the wayside in favor of worshiping government over God. That sort of thing. So maybe switch it up here for a minute. And what do you have going on for Christmas down your way this year?
Interestingly enough, there's been a big fight against government to actually try and attempt any kind of lockdown, mostly because I think the second article I sent you earlier today was basically a commentary on and from the medical fraternity here, which were saying that this Omicron variant is actually more mild than we anticipated and less lethal. The government is actually in a weak position here. because we recently had elections and they were, I can't say thumped, but they weren't given the support that they had traditionally had in the past. So I think they're very wary of actually trying to attempt anything stupid. Although, being government, you never know what they might try and attempt to do. So it appears that everything's just being put on hold. So in terms of Christmas, we haven't had any changes with regards any kind of lockdowns. We haven't had changes with regards any kind of new resolutions passed. And there is certainly a fight back from my perspective, from what I'm seeing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, to that end, obviously, I think what has come out of South Africa by way of this variant, as it were, again, I go back to what was stated here almost 3 weeks or so ago now on the 26th that many of your virologists, scientists, and whatnot basically called it a storm in a teacup, right?
Yeah.
Much to do about nothing. Yeah, you get some aches and pains and maybe a headache, and you're down for maybe a couple days, and then boom, you're right back up. But unfortunately, obviously, never letting a crisis go to waste. The West, whether you talk UK, Europe, here stateside, wanted to amplify that to 11 and use that to their advantage. And of course, you're going to see various countries in Europe try and push these lockdowns. I was just reading an article out of Keep Talking Greece here earlier that I think the people have thwarted, at least until Christmas time, having any measure of lockdown. And the government has backed off and says, well, we'll revisit that after Christmas at least. Perhaps maybe that is also the case in the UK. I think that Bojo is supposed to have a conference here or kind of a similar presser like what Biden did yesterday. Don't know whether or not anything came of that or if they're indeed pushing that out. But they have ramped this thing up to 11, but all based on fear. And of course, we're going to use it to their advantage. And I think from the UK side, maybe you guys in chat who are just joining from across the pond can confirm or tell me otherwise. I think a lot of this in the UK has to do with the fact that the people were pissed off enough after all this Brexit deal and they got their way that they're trying to get them to bend their will back the other way and put them right back under the rest of the EU bloc. And doggone well that the financiers at the top, the Soros types and that, would like nothing more than the EU to be in total control of everything over there and not have this independent aisle standing alone doing what they see fit because the people said so.
I think there's two things that's quite prevalent at the moment in the UK. The first being that while Bojo, who's a complete moron, has been talking about lockdowns, etc., he happened to have a little wine evening soiree at 10 Downing Street, which the press, I was actually quite fascinated. The fact that the press were actually giving him a good go, that he was not following all the correct protocols with regards to this so-called COVID variant. And so the public have actually latched onto this, which is quite positive because ultimately people have had enough. I don't think that the path that the UK government is trying to follow is going to be an easy one for them. I think there is enough pushback from the people saying, you know what, if you want to lock us down for Christmas, it ain't going to happen. So, and that's from feet on the ground, and that's from people and family that I do have in the UK. So they're actually going to disregard all of these things. And if you had a look at the protests, I wouldn't call them riots, but they were quite vociferous in what they were.
They're a little vocal.
Yeah, more than that. And I was actually thought to myself, okay, this is good because we need this kind of pushback, particularly in Europe, particularly in the UK. And if you just have a look at what they're trying to do to Austria which is a small country of fewer than 10 million people. I think the two smallest countries in Europe are Greece and Austria, where the population is around and about 10 million. They're not giving this thing up. They are not giving up without a fight. The French, bless their hearts, have been fighting for almost 4 years. The Italians are giving it a good go. Yeah, so the fight is coming on. The people are resisting. I'm seeing it in South Africa to a limited extent, and more so from the Europeans. It's almost as if I think people have seen what's happening in Australia and said, Australia, Austria, we're going to fight this thing. So the resistance is growing and the resistance is strong. And that it encourages me.
Well, it's good to see in other countries. I just wish that the rest of the populace here stateside would catch on as well. And unfortunately, I don't think we're necessarily there yet. And I think the media is largely the reason why. I think so many people are under the spell of the tube at this point. They have not broken away from their typical 5, 6, 10 o'clock at news night. For whatever reason, they don't trust finding resources net on the web, or if they are using social media and using the canned social media, I might as well call them legacy now, like the Twitters, Facebooks, and whatnot. It's going to become ever harder and harder to find anything because of all the censorship. And so, we have, in my opinion, a unique opportunity to help shape and drive them to the correct areas to go find legitimate information. And on top of that, I did a piece here back on Thursday. It's up on my Gab TV channel, over on my Rumble channel as well. And I was talking about the PCR tests and the media hype here. And you really have to watch these snakes in the media. And what I mean by that is with this particular article, I only covered one article as part of the show last Thursday night out of Brownstone Institute. And one of the things they highlighted in that, and now, again, you have to have a very, very discerning eye in order, I guess, to be able to catch this. When last year all this stuff came about and they were talking lockdowns and things of that nature, one thing that happened in the UK as Bojo was talking about this, was he said some things like, well, this is a very deadly, maybe it was the Omicron. Actually, I take that back. It was the Omicron here as of late. Talking about that, said it's very deadly, blah, blah, blah. And guess what the media did? They actually sent their political correspondents, who basically ate it up, never questioned anything about it, not one single statement. And so one would have to ask themselves, all right, Mr. Media, whether you're the BBC, whether you're Sky News, whether you're whatever in the UK that was probably there for said presser, why did they not send their chief medical correspondents, who would probably ask more questions than, say, just the general political correspondents? If it weren't for the fact that people probably didn't want those sorts of questions to be asked, you can see how they might be able to advance their agenda with the help of the media. You catch what I'm saying here?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll go back to, there was a meme that I was sending out about 6 months ago, which basically said that if anyone was paying attention around about the Nuremberg trials in 1947, that the greatest percentage of people that were actually hanged were media and from the medical profession. So again, none of this could be taking place without a couple of institutions being involved. Primarily the media, secondly the medical establishment, and thirdly the religious establishment. Because does anybody think that what Pope Francis has been doing over the past couple of weeks is actually sane? No. So on one hand, I'm actually grateful because he's actually exposing himself. And I'm fascinated by the fact that people have yet to answer certain questions as to his behavior. And he certainly, I mean, if Pope Francis is actually a Christian, well, then I'm an astronaut. But his behavior has been diabolical. And if you actually have a look at about, I think yesterday, he put out a piece that basically almost prohibits the traditional Latin Mass. Now, I'm not a Catholic, so I must put that, say that up front. But what happens to those poor people that have been faithful and following the traditions of Catholicism and are now coming to the realization that this supposed Pope is actually doing nothing at all to advance any kind of Christianity at all? All of these things ultimately give me some kind of encouragement.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And I guess I would probably surmise that the people today in that situation and recognition of that are probably not much different than the times of, say, back in the times of Martin Luther when he nailed the 95 Theses up, right?
Yeah.
Because if you think of what was going on with the church as a whole back then, you know, people did not have literature in front of them. They did not have hard Bibles printed out for them to read. No, they listened to the guys standing at the front of the, standing at the altar, at the pulpit, whatever, preach to them, right? And it wasn't until Gutenberg introduced the printing press and that the Bible actually was printed and started to be distributed that they knew they had a little problem, that they lost control. And then guess what? When people are actually able to read and discern for themselves, as opposed to perhaps some right or wrong teachings from the pulpit, obviously we saw the effects of that here over the course of the last 400 years.
Look, there's no doubt in my mind that these times are truly biblical. As to the extent of where we are, I'm probably the least qualified person to actually talk about it, but it does appear to me that much of what we are witnessing right now has been written previously. Now, to the extent that we're going to see the ultimate showdown, who knows? Okay, but I have no doubt, we are truly involved in a fight between good versus evil. And
absolutely.
There is no doubt in my head. Look, we all know the outcome. All you've got to do is flip to the end of the book. It says who wins. But whether it's going to be a prolonged period of suffering for many of us, which is highly likely at this point, I guess, or whether that period is going to be a bit more short-lived than we anticipate, which I'm hoping for, who knows? But nonetheless, we're in for the fight of our lives right now, whichever way you slice and dice it, whether it's you living in the US or in Europe or any part of Africa right now, we have to get up and fight because I don't mean that we should be violent in any way. I think the best paths are certainly the legal routes that we need to follow. We have to not obey. We have to actually kick back and say we will not comply. And yes, there will be casualties. But, you know, as the saying goes, rather die on your feet than live on your knees.
Yep, I don't disagree. So that being said, I'm going to circle back maybe one more time here, kind of get off maybe that topic, but obviously Christmas only a couple, 2-3 days away here. What sort of traditions, Nat, do you do for Christmas?
I generally follow the Greek Orthodox Christmas, which Christmas isn't such a big deal in Orthodoxy. The biggest religious holiday we have is certainly Easter.
Yep.
And it's something that's really close to my heart as well. But Christmas has traditionally been quite quiet, and probably it's one of those. I actually enjoy Christmas. I think it's a great time. I think it's wonderful to go out there and be kind to your fellow man. I think it's important to actually go out there and just to help the less privileged than ourselves, of which there are many. So I generally spend Christmas with family and friends and like-minded individuals who actually just want to have a calm, peaceful, joyous time. But at the same time, I think it's important to actually go and help those that are less fortunate than ourselves. And it's quite interesting. I think if one has a look at the tradition of St. Nicholas, who was one of those individuals who went and gave little gifts to homeless people, to people that were living out in the snow. And that's where the tradition of gifts came out. So, I think we have to look after the people that that are just that less fortunate than ourselves, and give praise to the fact that we are able to fight and live another day.
Well, I don't disagree. Charity, peace, goodwill toward all men, regardless of your affiliation. There are a lot of people out there who have it a lot worse off than we do. Count your blessings every day. The fact that you're still sucking air when you get up in the morning, you get to stretch, live another day, and continue on in a fight. Good segue into a piece I just happened to catch here. I ought to keep talking Greece here today as I was pulling some material. Says Chania says young men pay hotel room for homeless man. A group of young men in China got together their money and booked a hotel room for a homeless man. The exemplary act of solidarity with someone in need took place last Saturday on one of the coldest nights on Crete and the country. According to reports, the young men approached the homeless man and took him to a hotel where they booked a room and paid for it. The action quickly made the rounds in the local community, and deeply touched locals rushed to generously offer their help to the elderly homeless man, too. One resident offered to house the man for at least 3 months. Others offered clothes, beds, staff, and other necessary items for the daily life. It says, as posted on a local group on Facebook, the elderly man does not want to go to the homeless facilities of the municipality of Chania that offered him a place there. And apparently there we see said homeless man. Bottom line, as this article kind of alludes to here, a little charity goodwill will probably go a long ways to those who probably have it a lot worse off than we do. So, despite our differences, despite our the media's wanting to try and tear this country apart at the seams, to divide and conquer, keep that in mind this holiday season. And, if there's a good charitable organization that you feel compelled to donate to, probably not the bell ringers with the red kettles these days, based on their mistakes that they made and castigating white folks, well, go ahead and do so. And again, just count your blessings, especially this time of year. The fact that we're able to continue to do this, at least for now, I'm extremely thankful and grateful that we are able to continue in this, regardless of what platforms we're on. So we may still lose some. Hey, we're still going to fight on. I don't care. We'll go to our last dying breaths.
Exactly. Now going back to that story, in Greek, I noticed as you scroll down, basically.
I need to pull it back up.
Yeah. It was in bold. It said in Greek, a little further down. There we go. You see that headline where the blue is. It's basically that says "Όσα υπάρχουν άνθρωποι," and it actually makes me quite emotional because it says, wherever you witness humanity, that's the headline. You will
Wherever you
find
witness what?
humanity.
Okay.
Or the real word is anthropy means people, but it's deeper than that because it implies people with humanity. Okay, and it basically says that it's a wonderful thing because it shows that people are actually good. The majority of people out there have got a good heart and of kindness. And whenever you see real humanity, you will see these wonderful acts of kindness. Now, Chania is the second or third largest city or town in Crete. And as you know, Crete was one of the big resistance. The fight from Crete in the Second World War was stupendous. And that actually altered the course of the Second World War. But these people are amazing. I've been to this island. It's the biggest island, if I'm not mistaken, in the Mediterranean. They're hard people, they're strong people, they're people of faith. And it was so nice to see a story like this, which I'd not seen. And I thank you, Breaking, for actually showing it to me because it really meant something to me. And interesting enough, it's in the time of the year that we should be kinder to our fellow man. It's the time of the year that we should be helping others. It's the time of the year that we should be giving thanks for what we have. And
absolutely. And it's exactly why I stated what I did at the very top of the broadcast coming on here today, that you get these idiots from the World Health Organization, right? Tedros, and you got Fauci and that coming out saying, well, you need to ask your family members whether or not they're vaxxed or not. And if not, turn them away. And you got Tedros saying, you guys might not want to have large gatherings, things of that nature. No, throw all that crap off. We don't take orders. We don't abide in them. I don't really care at this point what they've got to say. We know what they are. They're tyrants. We're tired of them. We're not listening to them. At the end of the day, do what you see fit. Cast all those aspersions aside. Come together as a family, as you should, and don't let this crap divide you. And that's exactly what they want to try and do.
Give each other a hug. It's very important. I spoke to my cousin, who's like a sister to me. Her mom and my mom were sisters, obviously. And she lives in Australia and she has grandchildren, and she's a couple of years younger than me. And I spoke to her earlier tonight, and it was quite interesting. There's a childhood friend that we both had, and this woman who I've known since probably the age of 14, is not allowed to go to her husband's family for lunch on Christmas because she's not vaxxed. And
it's ridiculous.
My cousin phoned her up immediately and said to her, listen, you're welcome in my home. You come here, you bring all your children and your grandchildren and bring them along, and we'll have a jolly fine time. And I think that's the kind of spirit that I like to see happening, and it's happening. And I'm glad to say, and I'm proud to say, that many of my family members have adopted the same approach. And I think most of us that are Christian, that are humane, that care about our fellow man, will do exactly the same thing. I don't think any of us are special. I just do think that it's going to be more people than we expect, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and as you're stating that, I guess I'm thinking perhaps maybe a little bit biblically here about one of the parables and teachings in the days that Christ walked the earth, that you might recall a story. I forget which book it's out of at the moment off the top of my head, but they had prepared a feast for, I believe, a wedding. And it was kind of in the middle of the day, as I recall, and not everybody showed up. Some people didn't, so there were plenty of empty seats. And basically says, hey, go find all these people off the streets, bring them in. We've got all this food to eat. We need people seated at the table, and we want them to come in, enjoy, and partake, right? And I guess that kind of just plays into the story in that I just had up, the season in which we find ourselves. If your family is going to be that way, go pull people off the street. Yeah. Give it to people who need it most. I don't know what to say to those of you who may be in situations like that. Obviously, prayer is going to probably be about the only tool, perhaps, that you may have. You can certainly try to plant seeds, but I think the thing that many of us probably get hung up on out of all this is that we think that we are going to be the ones to change people with the information we bring, and that all of a sudden it's just going to be like flipping a light switch. It's, oh, you're absolutely right. I didn't see it that way. And then they're going to come over to our side, right? And it's not going to be that way. And people are going to get frustrated with that. And at the end of the day, all we can do, and all I think that we're tasked with doing, is just planting that seed. And then obviously, as we know, this being a spiritual battle that we find ourselves in, do not forget to pray for your family members, your fellow man, and those who do not see at this point. No more powerful tool that you have in your arsenal than the power of prayer, period. And God will take care of the rest. If it falls on good ground, it's going to take root and produce fruit. If it falls on bad ground, well, we know the parables and the Bible, how that works out. And it's basically going to get eaten up by the briars and the weeds, and it's not going to produce a stinking thing.
Amen to that, Breaking. It's exactly what we should be doing. There is nothing stronger than the power of prayer. We saw that. It's interesting enough, I saw on Bannon's War Room today an interview with Alexandra Chugel, who is a Catholic. He's quite he's a wonderful young man. I actually like him, and I think he's got a lot of spirit. And what he's actually doing out there, he's praying. One of the biggest things he's doing to help Austria is actually he's organizing prayer circles. Okay, whether you Catholic or Orthodox, it makes no difference, Protestant, whatever denomination. The fact that he's actually going out there and he's espousing the power of prayer. And he actually said something that I learned today for the first time, that the Austrians actually had a prayer vigil, I think in the late 50s, against communism, which was news to me, and it was interesting to learn. I'm somebody who loves history, and it's one of the few stories that's actually got by me. But it shows you that power lies within our belief system, and it lies within our ability to actually pray to our Creator and have faith that these things will transpire.
Faith as small as a mustard seed, folks. That's all it takes. And to that end, I don't know if you happen to catch a story in recent days or not. Perhaps you might recall the group of folks, I believe, that were missionaries down to Haiti that were kidnapped, a group of 17. You remember that? Okay.
Way back or recently?
Well, it's a continuation of that story of those who were captured and ransomed, and that they wanted $1 million a head.
Yeah, I remember that.
But here recently, they made their escape and actually were able to get out and free themselves of it. But reading the accord of that was pretty profound. And I forget where or which outlet I read that out of here. But the one thing that they stated that they did, they were put into a 10-foot by 12-foot room with these folks. There wasn't enough room for all of them to even lay down and sleep at night. Some were standing, some were crouching, sitting. Some of them were able to sleep kind of in shifts around the clock. And basically, what kept them intact through all of this. Mind you, they were only getting some scraps and that to eat on a per day basis, like a boiled egg at breakfast and maybe some other mush or whatever throughout the rest of the day. But they prayed in shifts. They had a major prayer with all of them, at least once or twice a day. And then on top of that, each person took half an hour. Each of them took half an hour, and they went through a shift of all these folks of nonstop prayer through this whole time. And they prayed for a sign that they would plot their escape. And on a couple of occasions, they thought that they had the sign, but they were a little bit skittish. And of course, mind you, this little 10 by 12 room or shack or whatever they were in was heavily guarded, mind you, in this particular location in Haiti. And finally here recently, they saw the sign and they says, yep, this is a time. And they got out despite all of the heavy guards and that around the shack. And the only thing that you can really say to that is it had to been divine for an occasion like that to even occur, because they could have easily been shot, killed, you name it. And I think they had only released maybe one or two prior to that, so I don't remember off the top of my head how many actually made it out as part of this escape, if it was 12 or 15, whatever. But nonetheless, they're all out.
Kind of reminds you of Daniel in the lion's den.
Kind of, yeah.
I think I'm at peace knowing that humanity will win. I'd like to think that we collectively will survive to actually witness this. But at the same time, it's not really that important, because I think we've got a job to do. We've got to be able to get the troops together. We've actually got to marshal them, move forward, and there will be casualties. But you know what? There's no reason to fear anything.
No, not at all. I mean, the Bible tells us on many occasions, verily, verily, I say unto you, fear not. And, fear is very powerful. The governments know that. How do you control a populace? Well, endless fear campaign, paranoia, and everything else. You can see why people sometimes do irrational things without thinking through. But the Bible tells us he's given us a power of a sound mind, right? And not to be swayed. Now, obviously, that requires your faith to come in as part of that. Regular communication, staying in the Word, that sort of thing. All that's got to come to play. And I definitely believe in this particular time that we find ourselves in, that the wheat is definitely being separated from the chaff. And I think that's also the reason why potentially we see folks who potentially are beside us in our own congregations make the unwise decision to go and get a poison stuck in their arm or their kid's arm because they have succumbed to fear.
Yes. I mean, I think I'm not quite sure which book, but in the book of Esther, there's a phrase that I really love, and I'm not sure if it's in chapter 4:8. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but if I'm not mistaken, there's a phrase that says, perhaps we were born for a time such as this. And I believe that. We are not here by accident. Whatever our roles are, I'm still not clear. But at the same time, I think we are fortunate enough to have been given some kind of enlightenment, some kind of perhaps wisdom, perhaps some kind of ability to actually understand what's going on around us. And our job is to actually marshal people to help them through this. Yeah. And to protect them, and perhaps to explain things as we go along. Okay. As much as we are learning, but the most important thing is not to have any fear. Do not fear anything, because ultimately, we're all going to die, and hopefully the later the better. But if it's meant to be now, one of the greatest things I always remember is the saying that goes, I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees. And
Yeah.
if we have the faith and we have the conviction and we have the truth on our side, there is no reason that any of us should be fearful.
Or Thomas Jefferson's other quote, and that's often spoken: resistance to tyranny is obedience to God.
Exactly.
By the way, just for the record, KB, the only Greek that I know, Mullen Labe.
Which is my that's my handle on Gab.
There you go.
Yeah, and for those who don't know where that comes from, but there was a battle with the 300, King Leonidas of Sparta, and all accounts are very different. But some accounts are that he faced with his 300 men up to 1 million, and the lowest I've seen is 50,000. But he chose the point at which they would battle, which was a very narrow ravine. And to the one side, there was a cliff and sea, and to the other side, there was this huge mountain. And all that happened was those 300 happened to be able to, well, they chose the spot where they would engage with the enemy, and they stood there, and every single one of them died. Every single one. And yet they won the battle. So against all odds, being Greek, I'm used to that, we should not be afraid of anything. If we believe in what we are doing, and what we are doing is good, and the fact that we are defending what we were told by our Creator, we have nothing to fear. And we will win this war. It might not be pretty. There will be casualties. It might be you and I. But at the end of the day, humanity will survive these atrocities that are being inflicted upon us.
Well, thanks a lot, you guys. I was already emotional today, and then listening to you guys, it's like warrior chants, warrior cries.
Yeah, there you go. Put on the war cry, a little war paint, and away you go.
The greatest sign of the warrior is the one that he gives love.
Yes. Good
And
words. Good talk, you guys. I'm glad you talked that out for the last 15, 20 minutes. It's been awesome. Thank you.
There's nothing to fear. Have your faith, say your prayers, get down on your knees, be thankful, help your fellow man where you can, and have a blessed and wonderful Christmas, everybody.
And we may know that, but it's just good to hear others encourage you and say those things too.
Jesus is the reason for the season, not all this consumerism and that they want to try and blow this up into.
Actually, breaking, I just want your opinion on this. The other day, my sister-in-law is a great believer as well, and we were having a conversation, and she said to me, as a matter of interest, what gives you this conviction that actually all of this is true? And I said to her, when I realized, it took a while, or 60 years or so, when I realized that the fact that every single one of the disciples was running away and was fearful, whether it be Peter, who denied Christ 3 times, who was there below when he was being crucified. Really, they'd all run away. But upon his revealing, every single one of them went out and spread the word.
Yeah, absolutely.
That says to me it was real, because whether they were living in this fear, whether they denied him, there must have been a very good reason for every single one of them, bar one, to be crucified. And they went to their crucifixion happened because they realized that what he was saying was the truth. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah, and there are just so many accounts and stories in the Bible that, we can take to the bank, right? Whether it be the case of Christ walking on the water, he got the disciples in the boat. He calls Peter out of the boat and he says, come walk towards me. And he does. And it isn't until he takes his eyes off him across the way that he starts to sink and realize, what the heck am I doing? I'm walking on water here. And he doesn't realize that it's, he took his eyes off the prize, as it were. And at that point, that's when he began to sink and had to be rescued, right? So the bottom line is keep your eyes on the prize, keep your nose in the book. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father but through me, right? In the beginning was the Word, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of the day, if you stay grounded in that, that is your bedrock. Everything else is shifting sands. Look at the stuff that they're putting out there today. What sort of bedrock are they laying in their dystopia that we're going to be able to stand on? Not a damn thing. It's all shifty grounds. It's all ridiculousness and hopium, false hope, mind you. They want to be worshipped. They want to be the ones that are omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. And there's only one that is capable of doing that, and that's God himself. I don't care how much technology they try to introduce. It's just not going to happen. And it's the ridiculousness of even what we see playing out here today, folks. God made you perfect, right? You're fearfully and wonderfully made, according to the Psalms. You were fashioned from dirt. God breathed life into you. Is it a wonder that every damn thing that we need in this earth comes from the dirt? Zinc, magnesium, manganese, et cetera, all those things we need. And yet here in our stupid, prideful intellect, man seems to think that they know better than God, that injecting some sort of crap concoction into you is better than your stinking immune system that you were made with to handle all these things.
He didn't mess up the immune system.
Last I checked, nope.
Yeah, he's the greatest architect of them all. We have been given every single remedy. It just happens to be in the garden. Go out there, put your hands in the dirt. Be thankful that we are able, and we will win. There is no doubt about it. We are blessed, and you know what, Breaking? The more I see the fight going on, and it doesn't, like I said, it's not a violent fight. I think it's a fight of growing faith. I was a bit despondent. I think I mentioned to you last week when we spoke that 3 out of 10 US citizens didn't have a religion or didn't believe in anything, which is quite fascinating. But those numbers are actually no different in the rest of the world. The consumerism that we've seen, I think one of the best things that's happened over the past 2 years with all of this pandemic nonsense is that actually many people have come to realize how little they actually need and what's important. And again, I think that's one of the beautiful messages that we can give out at this time of year, whether people believe in Christmas or not. I think it in the spirit of giving, in the spirit of loving your fellow man, and in the spirit of actually fighting for what is right. Yeah, I'm very confident in what I see coming up for the next year. It'll be a tumultuous year, and just like Peter sank when he took his eye off the prize, many of us will. But hopefully we have our fellow humans and kind people who will help us survive all of this.
Yep, and along those lines, I always kind of have to defer a little bit back to Thomas Paine's The Crisis, because, there's nothing new under the sun, folks. At the end of the day, we're fighting many of the same things that our forefathers fought. Perhaps just we've got technology they didn't. Or at least more of it, let's put it that way. But, it is the fight of our time. at the end of the day, I think Thomas Paine said it best. He says, the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. And we shouldn't expect that they're just going to roll over for us and move out of the way. It's just not going to happen. Yes, there's going to be casualties. There's going to be strife. And even internally in your own families, you're going to see that. But again, the victory is on the other side, and it's going to be glorious at the end of the day, like what Thomas Paine stated way back when.
Extend the hand, and you never know who takes it.
Sonny, did we lose you?
I'm here.
I thought maybe we lost you. Hopefully you're not bawling your eyes out or nothing. I'm muted here.
No, I didn't go all Tammy Faye.
Oh, all right. All right. Thank God. Whew, jeez. Makeup running down the face, asking for donations.
As long as you're not part of the Salvation Army.
No, I'm not.
I think one of the best things that we can do is, I keep on saying that. In fact, I've been trying to do it for the past year. We can vote with our money. Remember that.
At least for now, we can.
Yeah, we can. Well, until it becomes cashless. But which was quite interesting. I sent you two articles earlier today. We had a 24-hour shutdown of electricity in Cape Town, in South Africa, yesterday. And
with your banks?
Everything. There was
power. Okay, yep.
Power outage, and it was quite interesting that there's a small shopping center or mall not too far from where I live, and they decided in their infinite wisdom to go cashless.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I remember, I know one of the directors of that company and one of the owners of that building. And I said to him, oh, let's see how that works out for you. Okay. Needless to say, that was one business that was closed for the entire day. And they sublet to a whole lot of different restaurants and eateries and whatnot in there. And not one of those, and I felt sorry for the people that were the tenants, but this crowd, I mean, I said to them, well, good luck. This is Africa. And if you want to go cashless, you've got to go a long way before you are able to achieve your aims. So miracles happen in small little ways. And despite the fact that we didn't have power, and I wasn't sure whether or not I'd be able to send you a message, whether or not I'd be able to be on tonight. For 24 hours, I had nothing. My mobile phone had died. I had no means of actually charging it. My computer, my laptop were all down. And notwithstanding the fact that once you don't have power, all the networks, all the mobile networks, eventually their batteries run out because they work on inverters. And those inverters are only used to perhaps 2 or 4 or 6 hours. So 24 hours of no electricity will do a lot of damage to many things. I watched so many businesses having to remove food products off their shelves. I know, just think about this.
An interesting conversation, because I saw a post today and supposedly it was of a bank and it had a notice on it that said, we're out of cash, we're out of cash. I'm sorry, you can't make any withdrawals today. Spectre,
Yes.
Have you heard anything about that?
Well, it's funny you bring that up because this morning on the broadcast, I highlighted the IMF, the World Bank, the Bank of International Settlements, and a number of banks going through an exercise here. Zero Hedge is actually a little bit late to the party on this one, but I read it anyway. The story actually came out probably a good 3 weeks ago now, at least. Times Israel and a number of other outlets carried this. But basically, they ran an exercise, and it had a name, can't remember off the top of my head, where they ran a simulation, should stick out like a sore thumb, like Event 201, simulation that hackers had managed to thwart the banks, and through the use of disinformation and propaganda, were able to control what was going on. And so they ran with 10 countries led by Israel and Jerusalem, the United Arab Emirates, the US, UK, and a number of other countries all partook in this exercise, going through this scenario where the bank's net would be offline, how would they handle liquidity issues, things of that nature, et cetera, and try to restore order. And I just found the timing rather interesting because obviously, if you know and have paid attention to what the World Economic Forum, the Davos types, the Klaus Schwabs, and them are pushing for, you can see how this is going to play out very clearly. And I think our timing is very short financially here. The Omicron variant has played an integral part into finance. It has given them cover for what they need to basically continue to blow up the system. It's going to start with our Fed here, first and foremost. I'm a firm believer in that. But this particular exercise and its timing lends itself to Cyber Polygon, which is another exercise that the Davos WEF folks net dreamt up around such a scenario. And, you know, they're going to have cover for all this, folks. They always do. While the men are busy behind the scenes financially, obviously benefiting themselves, regardless of which side of the war they fund, they're going to have to spark something up somewhere to provide cover for this while it takes place. So be cognizant of that, number one. Is it to say that we should be withdrawing our cash, you know, as quickly as possible? I can't say at this point, but it's in my mind kind of serves as a bit of a marker, a line of demarcation, if you will, of what is to come here. And I think I can't speculate when, but all I can say is probably pretty soon, because they realize that the gig is up. This Omicron is not what it was, right? They're going to use that to their advantage. And it just so happens, as all this stuff came up on the 26th, day after Thanksgiving, a lot of the banksters net were questioning whether or not the Fed was going to be able to continue with its tapering and interest rate rises, things of that nature, et cetera, et cetera. They've got this all laid out, built in, baked in to what is on the NASDAQ, the Dow Jones, all that stuff on a day in, day out basis. Introduce Omicron, right? Okay, now it reintroduces uncertainty, the potential for governments to shut down, which reduces economic activity, and you can play the game of cause and effect all the way through to its bitter end if you so desire. What people have to understand is that there is no way in this day and age, when we have an everything bubble where all the assets have been inflated, right, that they're going to allow all these assets to suddenly implode 50, 60, 70%. Let's not say it hasn't happened in the past. They think they're smart by putting circuit breakers in place in these central banks to prevent things like that from happening. But if this thing takes off and it supersedes whatever tools they have in place, it's going to be all bets off. And all I can say is be ready. I would say have something on hand, minimize what you have exposure to in said bank accounts. They will try, in my opinion, to try and do a haircut like what they did with Cyprus here a number of years back. They'll do anything. This is what a cornered animal does in desperation, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it in D.C. With the mansion business playing out. They didn't get their way. They're stomping their feet. They're pissed off that Build Back Better is not coming to fruition. The likelihood of it coming to fruition next year with midterms coming up. All these rats jumping ship on the Dem and Republican side, knowing that they're not going to get reelected, that sort of thing. All that stuff is coming to a head. And in the background, watch the financials. That's why I focus on it on the morning show as much as I do, because this all ties into it. But the timing is certainly interesting in that, like you said, whether the banks are putting notes on doors at this point in time, whether they want to try and introduce further panic amidst this Omicron crap that the media has drummed up as a case-demic. Just keep your head on a swivel, especially in times like these. You know, it was over Christmas break in 1913 when most of the congressmen were home on Christmas break that in the dark of night, wheel in the banksters and the various folks in that to pass the law that gave us the central bank known as the Federal Reserve Act. They did that over Christmas break, maybe it was 1912, ahead of 1913. I might be off a year, but nonetheless, this is a shady crap we got to watch for.
Breaking, I couldn't agree with you more. As you know, my day job is in the financial markets. And
I wish I had a day job.
Doesn't pay well.
Well, I don't disagree.
I've got a lousy boss. It happens to be me. So the interesting thing is that a couple of years ago, and obviously Cyprus is close to my heart as well, I've got Cyprus citizenship, and that bail-in, which you're quite correct. Yep. I think there was a test run for what they're going to try and do. And one of the things that I would encourage our listeners, for those who have enough assets, do not have everything in one bank account. Spread across different banks, because who knows which banks are going to fail.
No.
Okay. Do not have any amounts greater than $100,000, because that's all that's guaranteed by the system. So spread it across various banks. Have your bank accounts limited in the amount of monies that are there, because a good friend of mine I try to warn him, but nonetheless, he had 2 million euros in a bank which was called the Popular Bank of Cyprus. Interesting, you know. It went belly up. It went the way of Lehman. And having 2 million euros in that account, he was left with 100,000. So go to the limits that they will guarantee. I think in the UK it's £80,000. I'm sure in the US it's $100,000. So for those who are fortunate enough to have those sums of money available to them, make sure that you're not over those kind of limits, because your monies are not guaranteed by the system.
No, what people don't understand with our fiat money system, and if you put your dollars into a bank, yes, they always have the nice little sticker outside the door, says FDIC guaranteed up to 250,000 or what have you. Or if you go to a credit union, it's the NCUA, I think it is, or whatever, and they guarantee up to a certain amount. I wouldn't rely on that. At the end of the day, all of those dollars and that you put into your deposits, once they leave your hand, they are no longer yours. They are the possession of the banks. Think of common law. 9/10 of the law is possession, right? Well, they possess it. You don't. All you are left with is a digital ledger, if you will, that shows, hey, this is what it says I have in said account, or a piece of paper they send you in a form of a statement on a monthly basis, and that's it. You technically don't own it. And because we live in a fractional reserve system, those, let's say you deposit $100, well, that $100 is at liberty to be lent out 90% of that over and over and over and over again. That's what fractional reserve banking is, which is what we're under. And so in order to minimize your exposure, I would try and stay well under the limits of what the FDIC is in a given account. Again, possession, 9/10 of the law, hard assets. Those are the things I would suggest getting into as you do your prepper type stuff, whether it be in land, whether it be in gold, silver, bullion, whatever it may be that you opt to use that may be of value to you later on. Do not keep that much in a given institution, because it is at risk. It's got a counterparty risk associated with that, and they will take it, as demonstrated in the past.
And with no remorse, as we saw in Cyprus recently. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
I mean, we're being ripped off as it is, right? With zero, what they call ZERP and NERP, zero interest rate percentages net on your deposits, or negative, which by the laws of economics shouldn't even be possible. But because of the system, this Babylonian BS, this system we find ourselves in, they create these machinations and that behind the scenes that basically literally rob you blind in these institutions. And at this point, technically, there is no reason to even have banks in this environment. No. The only reason it works the way it does at this point is for the corporations. It's cheap for them to borrow money so that they can pay their CEOs when they buy back their shares on the cheap and filter it right back into the CEO, the CIO, the CFO's pockets. Period. That's it.
I did a little exercise, and in short, what happens is, for example, if the US Congress decides to give South Africa $100, okay, $100 is sent here for whatever reason, for AIDS or for helping children with the education system or health reasons or whatever the case may be. What we find is I follow the cash, and I did this whole exercise, and up to about 12% of the monies find their way to the influential politicians, and it doesn't necessarily mean the incumbents. It could be the opposition, but everyone's in on the scam, okay? And as you will notice that worldwide, governments love public-private partnerships and NGOs, okay? Why? Because NGOs don't pay taxes. They're not-for-profit organizations. They are not audited, which is vital in the way they operate. And those NGOs, so the 12% goes, or let's call it 10%, finds its way to the local politicians. Then that money goes into these NGOs, okay, which all of the governments globally love public-private partnerships. And the people that administer these things are the same old culprits, whether they be soap stars or local politicians or celebrities. They then all take their cut, okay? Then the money goes into the washing machine, as I call them. And those washing machines are Cyprus, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Channel Islands, Guernsey, etc., etc.
Yep.
Understand that not one of these transactions could take place without the help and assistance of the banking corporation. So the banks are also in on the scam. So once you go through all of these washing machines, once you've gone through the NGOs, that last remaining bit actually goes to the politicians that sent the money. So if it were the US Congress that decided to send $100 to South Africa, for example, that last remaining bit will go into their foreign bank accounts. And that's it shouldn't be a surprise that Nancy Pelosi is worth $440 million after having worked in Congress for all her life.
Not bad for a $225,000 salary for Speaker of the House or whatever it's up to these days.
And they're all in on it, whether it be Republicans or Democrats. It's the same side of the different side of the same coin.
KB, can you give me the quick ROI on that?
Well, your ROI is actually quite fascinating when you never actually put 1 cent of your own money out there. None of this is done with any risk to these politicians. And if you want to talk about ROE, return on equity, it's even greater.
Oh, of course.
So, yeah, it's theft. And we are talking about a criminal conspiracy that all governments are involved in, all of them, with very few exceptions. I believe that perhaps Hungary and perhaps Poland are a little bit more legit than most. But as for the rest, the 98% of them are all criminal enterprises. That's why this thing is truly biblical.
Hence why it is called Congress. The great con.
It is Congress.
Sunny days, we've infringed on your time.
Yeah, big time here.
No, I asked a question, so
Well, that was a long answer.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Did we answer your question, by the way?
Yes,
all right.
I am going to pull out some cash. Not all of it, but something.
No, everything in moderation. You've just got to go out there and ensure your own safety and your families. And I agree with breaking. Perhaps 10-15% of your assets should be in hard currency, which I call gold and silver bullion. And I actually want the physical in my hand.
Absolutely.
That way I can buy a piece of bread.
And I talk quite a bit about this on the morning show and that I do for those guys of you that follow inflation. It's a tax, folks. It's a tax on all of us. And the fact that inflation is what money has been created by the Federal Reserve. Again, I've seemingly said this till I'm blue in the face, but the Federal Reserve has printed more into existence in the last 18-20 months since the start of this scamdemic than at any time since the start of the Federal Reserve in 1913. And there's no stopping it. All they're doing at this point, through all the job owning and everything that came out of the FOMC here recently, yes, they plan on tapering their treasury buys and their mortgage-backed security buys, less than the $120 billion per month and that they've been doing before starting to raise rates. But if things start to go sour because of this Omicron variant, it's quickly going to be pulled off the table, and then we'll fire that printing press right back up. And that is exactly the reason why we are seeing gas prices the way they are, energy prices the way they are, the loaf of bread on your grocery store shelf as high as it is, milk, and every other commodity in that's out there. Do you want to point blame? That's the Eccles building in Washington, D.C.
Couldn't agree more. But I think their game is up. There will be collateral damage, unfortunately. And the best we can do as simple folk, because that's really what we are, is actually try and protect ourselves as best we can. And one of the best things we can do is diversify and ensure that we do have some kind of hard assets in our hand. And a friend of mine actually said to me the other day, if they impose further lockdowns and all the stupidity, what are you going to do? And I said, buy more ammo.
Yeah, lead is a hot commodity. Lead, copper, anything along those lines is good. And I see some of you guys out in chat asking, what do you do with your money in times like these if you own your own house and whatever? Hard assets are the way to go. Again, whether it be land, whether it be ammo, whether it be gold, silver, bullion, put in a depository, as allocated or unallocated, that's up to you. There are some places around the country that do that. Aside from that, you may consider investing in your community. Build yourself some raised beds, learn how to garden, have the tools necessary to be able to sustain yourself for a period of time when this thing goes belly up. Canning related stuff is going to be probably a hot commodity. Lids to be able to can with. All those things are going to come to play. And any sort of books, there's no guarantee we're going to have electricity or internet to be able to converse. So having hard copy books is going to probably be essential for a period of time. What's that? Seeds?
Bees.
Bees, yeah, bees. If you can invest in them, if you've got the land to be able to put a hive on there, get your own honey. Honey, I'll tell you, man, that's a little, lack of a better term, honey pot of a commodity. But if you get a little pint jar, like a little mason jar, ball, cur, whatever, you can make a pretty penny off of your bees and their honey production. Here in my neck of the woods, depending on what type of honey and what level of processing it goes through, just local honey, you can fetch, let's say a pint jar. I was looking at one here today. It was about $11 a pint. So you can imagine what a gallon of honey would cost, or even a raw honey at that. And honey is absolutely good for medicinal purposes. It's good for sugar substitutes. You name it. A lot of things you can do with honey.
Buy land with wood. I mean, out in Tennessee, you can find amazing tracts of land that have got. You probably be able to pay for the land with a portion of the wood. So there's a lot you can do to actually sustain yourself, to protect yourself, to actually grow communities, to actually encourage people to start feeding themselves. I think that's the ultimate. And if you think about it, what I'm really encouraging is a parallel economy. We do not have to actually support and help any of these globalist companies. We should go out there and the likes of Coca-Cola and the Salvation Army and Amazon, we should be actually not necessarily boycotting them, but avoiding them. And all we have to do is support each other. And it's an amazing thing. It's an ecosystem that actually works to help everybody.
Yep. All right, Sonny, we've gone long enough here. You're our caboose today, actually.
I am?
Yep, you're bringing up the rear today.
Okay.
So you can take as long as you see fit to go through whatever it is you want, so long as I'm in bed by midnight.
We've overstayed our welcome, Sonny days.
All right. Okay.
And thank you for giving us the time.
Oh, absolutely. It was the Sunny Days Breaking and KB show.
No, I'm not opposed to round tables, but it was only a two-way table here for a little while.
I don't know much about what you're talking about. I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I don't have much info on it. You know what I mean? Like, I just take in info. It's not one of my specialties.
Yep.
Neither do we.
No,
Yes,
we just read a couple articles every now and again.
You two know a lot about the finance stuff. That's good. Okay, well, I will take over and share a few things and finding on Twitter. I'm still on Twitter.
By the way, take care, KB. Merry Christmas. We'll see you back next week.
And many blessings to you and yours.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, KB.
Yeah, thank you so much. And really, my prayers and thoughts are with you all in the US. I still believe that the salvation of the rest of the world rests with you. And hopefully, we're entering into a period where we have a bit more of an awakening. And lots of love to you all. And
thank you.
Blessings and love.
Thank you so much. All right.
Over to you, Sonny.
I think I'll probably only go till about a quarter after.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so it's probably about a half hour. Okay, thanks, Breaking.
All right.
All right.
Bye now.
See ya.
Bye-bye. All right, you guys. So I did get on. I'm using Gab more. I'm on Getter, and I'm still using Twitter. And I did a lot of stuff to my computer, so I'm hoping. Oh, and it just blinked. So I'm pretty sure it's just Twitter that's doing this. It has something to do with Twitter because it doesn't do it on like Getter and Gab and these other ones. But for me, I just don't get as much information off Getter and Gab. Gab, you have to get the Pro to get bookmarks, and Getter doesn't have any bookmarks. They do have a lot of news on the side, though. I like that, and it is set up pretty much like Twitter, although again, it just doesn't have that. It doesn't have like a folder for bookmarks. The only thing I can think of is that if I retweet or repost on Getter, then it would be in my feed what I'd want to show you on the show. So yeah, so just looking at Getter a little bit. This is a breaking 911. I just saw this on Twitter too. A congresswoman carjacked and robbed at gunpoint in Philadelphia. So that's kind of interesting. Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon was carjacked and robbed at gunpoint in South Philadelphia on Wednesday. It sounds like she's okay. Nothing. I mean, she's not harmed in any way. Probably scared out of her pants, but yeah. And then Carly just tweeted 54 minutes ago, and I've been seeing this all day. I'm not sure if Breaking talked about it, but bombshell, cure for COVID discovered. This is really like sketchy to me, but scientists at Walter Reed Army Institute of Research believe they have come up with a vaccine that is effective against COVID. I guess it's some kind of, let's see, I thought it was a pill, but maybe it's not a pill. Let's see. Well, it says it's a vaccine. So I'll keep an eye on that. Don't know what that's about. Still thinking natural immunity is the way to go, but that's me. I think this is an old one, but I'm going to go ahead and play it. It might drop, but we'll see. I don't care if that's old or not. I love that one. So it was a man that Ohio dad stepped up big time after the sound system had a major malfunction before his son's high school basketball game, and he belted out the national anthem after being nudged by his wife. And it was loud enough for the entire gymnasium to hear. His patriotism is infectious. I agree. And so I also wanted to say to everyone, Merry Christmas from my heart and spirit to yours. God bless you and yours. I wish you peace, love, and joy now and in the future. And I wanted to just say on behalf of 5x5, I hope we've entertained you, shared info that informed you. We may be small, but we are mighty, and we will continue to grow as long as we do the right thing. And I hope I encourage, I hope I comfort, I hope I share info you can use, and I hope you laugh or giggle. That's worth it. So moving on, I thought this was neat. This VB put this out. A little child, a shining star, a stable rude, the door ajar. Yet in the place, so crude forlorn, the hope of all, the world was born. I thought that was really pretty, just inspiring. And then there's just some posts that I just pulled some posts from Twitter that make me think or provoke thought or make me maybe laugh or smile. This John Cardillo, he put out Soylent Green was set in 2022. Do you remember that movie? I barely remember it. I should go back and watch it. I always did like Charlton Heston as an actor. But he says the opening paragraph of plot description by the year 2022, the cumulative effects of overpopulation, pollution, and apparent climate catastrophe have caused severe worldwide shortages of food, water, and housing. I just find that interesting, this whole movie connection that they do with what's going on. So the Steve Ferguson put out, Congress is exempt from the vaccine mandate. Make your decisions accordingly. And then Gracie answered, no to the COVID jab for her. I identify as a senator. And maybe that's what we need to do. We need to identify as senators. Not that I want to do that, but hey, if it works. And then I thought this was nice. Merry Christmas to all those deployed. Remember them. I don't have any soldiers right now in my family, but yes, Merry Christmas to all those who are deployed. I hope they're safe and well. Maggie Vandenberg put out, how are we going to secure our elections in Arizona if our Republican legislators want us to vote on machines connected to the internet? True, got to get rid of those machines. And then Lloyd the legalist, he's pretty funny, put that last stipulation makes this a tough meal to qualify for. So the sign says free meal to anyone over 80 years old, and it has a little asterisk. And then it says if accompanied by both parents. That's strange. What? He finds the weirdest stuff. Out of Alpha News, if you've watched me at all, I'm out of Minnesota. So I've been watching Dr. Jensen. Senator Gazelka criticized Dr. Jensen for allowing a radical representative to play a role in his campaign event. Jensen shot back saying that people think Gazelka is a radical himself, citing the senator's traditional Christian beliefs. So I don't know, hadn't had a lot of chance to check this out, but I really do like Dr. Scott Jensen. And I guess he was attacked by his opponent, Senator Paul Gazelka. He's attacked a lot for his beliefs, Dr. Jensen. I think they've gone after his license 5 times now because he believes in choice, medical choices. So Ukraine CIA simulation warlord. Twitter jumped again and blinked. All right. I was here. Breaking, jury in Ghislaine Maxwell cases failed to reach a verdict. So now the trial has a break until December 27th with instruction from the judge to avoid any media. So that's kind of interesting. December 27th after the holiday. All right. And free spirit and os, born free, live free. Happiness is the new rich, inner peace is the new success, and health is the new wealth. Kindness is the new cool. She says good morning, but good morning, afternoon, and evening around the world, folks. And again with Maggie Vanderberg, this Marge Hagar put out, like you've been told a million times before, fix 2020 first. And Maggie says, hey, it would be great to get to the bottom of 911, Las Vegas, Area 51, who killed Jeffrey Epstein and JFK, and holding people accountable who committed fraud in 2020. But I wouldn't hold my breath. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm still holding out hope. I got hope. So Breaking 911 put out the CDC director, you are 20 times more likely to die of the C if you are unvaccinated compared to if you are vaccinated and boosted. And I'm not going to take the time to play this. Personally think that's just a bunch of junk. But this has been making the rounds today. I've seen it several times posted by a lot of people. And yeah. Just keep spewing your fear porn, people, and I will keep ignoring you and not listening to you. So then Breaking 911 also put this out. Dr. Fauci says Americans should ban their family members from holiday gatherings if they're unvaxxed. I like Nick Searcy. He's that actor, producer of, I believe it's called Capitol Riot. He did that movie. I can't think of what it's called. It's capital something. Anyone who takes this man's advice concerning their family members does not deserve to have a family. Nick Cersei. Oh my gosh, he always just like hits back on Twitter. But I would agree with this too. I mean, it's like, who is this guy, this little Franken doctor, to tell us that we should ban our own family members? He's a new kind of, or a different kind of homewrecker, I guess. So scientists, this was out of NTD News, scientists at the Walter Reed Army of Institute of Research say they have developed a vaccine that is effective against COVID-19 and all its variants, including the newly discovered Omicron strain. This was that story that I had seen on Getter by Carly. So that is being really pushed heavily today too. Susan Keener retweeted the Big Dave. He says this is amazing but true, but this is what he posted. In 1939 in Kansas, wheat mill owners realized that women were using their sacks to make clothes for their children. The mills started using flowered fabric for their sacks so the kids would have pretty clothes and the labels would wash out, a gesture of pure kindness. And it's actually out of this History All Day. So I don't know if that's true, but that's pretty wild if it's true. That would have been like in the Depression era, I'm thinking, 1939. Dr. Ray put out, oh, and it jumped again, I'm sorry. And so now I'm gonna have to figure out a different way to do things, folks, but I don't want to open all the tabs because I think that bogs your computer down too. But it makes a person dizzy when I scroll like that. So this Dr. Ray put out, do you believe him? Pfizer CEO responds to Joe Rogan. So I'll play a little bit of this, just enough to yell, let's go, Albert.
My good friend Joe Rogan, he's been highlighting to me this aggressive marketing on mainstream media channels by Pfizer. So let me ask a general marketing question. Do you see this as a conflict of interest? Is it might bias the reporting of news? That a lot of people, me included, look to these mainstream channels of news for kind of authority of like, what the heck's going on in the world?
So I'm going to just stop it because this is licensed.
And if Pfizer is sponsoring many of these shows,
let's go, Albert.
There's a worry. It may be a perception thing, but there's also a natural worry that it would influence what they're talking about because they're afraid of losing the sponsorship. It's subtle, but at scale, it might have.
Look at how carefully he's saying what he's even saying. Like somebody who didn't have something to lose would just ask him the question directly, I think.
A serious impact. Do you worry about this?
I think people could go one way or another because of multiple reasons.
Wait, I have to ask, does Albert the veterinarian, look it up, he's a veterinarian, does he worry about anything with all the money he has? Does he worry about anything other than himself and his family or, you know, his life? I highly doubt he has a worry in the world.
From our perspective, I don't think we have aggressive marketing.
Oh my gosh, he says he doesn't have aggressive marketing. Have you ever seen the video of all the like shows that like Good Morning America and, you know, all of these shows that say sponsored by Pfizer at the end of it? Yeah. Well, I don't know if you have aggressive, but you certainly do have subtle marketing, right?
What we do, we go on TV and we are having ads about our products, and they're highly regulated. I think it is the right.
They're highly regulated. It's laughable. Given the circumstances, I hardly think that they're highly regulated, but hey, who am I? I'm just a little podcaster.
Of people to know, to learn that if there is a product like that, it's very clearly that we cannot say things that they are off-label, that have not been approved. We need to have, every time we go on TV, as you know, FDA is forcing us to say also the bad things that can happen for a medicine. Sometimes that takes more time than the good things.
Oh, the bad things that can happen is that little teeny print that goes by your, flashes by on your TV so quick you can't read it. Or they say it like they're really sped up when they say what the side effects are.
And I don't think that we are doing aggressive marketing. Now, people could be influenced and can be biased in the podcasts or in the other type of media activities that they have for multiple different reasons.
As well as the people that you share your marketing with could be biased too, huh, Albert? Oh my gosh, Twitter keeps doing this. I'm sorry. I know, I'm going to have to quit using Twitter, but for now, darn it, I lost my place.
My good friend.
The bad things that can happen for a medicine, sometimes that takes more time than the good things. And I don't think that we are doing aggressive marketing. Now, people could be influenced and can be biased in the podcasts or in the other type of media activities that they have for multiple different reasons.
Yeah, I know, but it's pressure. It's human nature. I mean, one of it is perception, but I worry about it too. I have a ton of sponsors for this podcast, for example, and none of them ever ask me to anything. They're just, I think likely that kind of pressure is not happening for Pfizer, but there's implied pressure.
Well, I personally don't believe anything the veterinarian says. So, let's see. Oh, this was cute. It's only 30 seconds. Hopefully it won't flash. And he said he didn't want him. Dads, after getting a pet they didn't want. Oh. He's saying, I love you. I love you. Doggy. Yeah, I don't want that pet.
Other foot.
Other foot. That's cute. All right. Inner City Press put this out. Okay, U.S. versus Ghislaine Maxwell jury deliberation. Judge Nathan just took the bench after 6+ hours. She says she will send in a note after the jurors if they want to come in and deliberate more tomorrow, December 23rd. Inner City Press will live tweet. So Ghislaine Maxwell saw no need to testify. She said all the survivors did was lie. Drunk on impunity like the United Nations, but it seems there'll be no more Little St. Jeff's vacations. Oh, Ghislaine. Why should we believe you, Ghislaine? Ghislaine Maxwell has been brought out to the courtroom and is sitting at the defense table. Her official lawyer, Bobby Sternheim, is back speaking to the front row of the gallery where Leah Safin is. Jury has a note. May we please have the following testimonies in a binder? Kate, Jane, something else written next to it. Judge Nathan says, I don't know if they're asking for another copy. Judge Nathan says something has been crossed out on the note. Lawyers laugh. Judge Nathan, I guess they are asking for another copy of Jane. Also, they want Kate and Juan, Alessi. Judge Nathan, I believe the response of a deliberating tomorrow, December 23rd is coming. Judge Nathan, the response on deliberating tomorrow is no thank you, so it will break for 4 days caused by earlier 3-day breaks, stories later. So I'll see everyone at 4:25. The jury wants to leave at 4:30 and now deliberate tomorrow. Soon podcast and stories on Inner City Press. So, yeah. So that happened today. I think I'll skip that. Heather Mullins put out Real America's Voice. There is no difference between show me your papers and show me your Vax card. Is there a difference? Creating a tier of second-class citizens and refusing to allow them to be a part of the community is what Nazis do. American Nazis are the ones coercing and forcing the compliance of our citizens. All right. This is that, what I was referring to, but now I'm questioning it, and I have no way of proving if it's true or not. The Federal Reserve is not printing new notes right now. The money circulating in our economy is what we have to work with for now. Supposedly, this was Orange County, California Bank has posted this notice. Attention due to the Federal Reserve suspension of new currency ordering. We currently have no way or no new money to distribute. We apologize for the inconvenience. So I don't know if that's true or not, and I don't see that anybody's responded to it, and it's been over like 2 hours. So let's see, Reuters fact check. Invitations for Dutch politicians to the WEF summit have been misrepresented online to claim they are leaked letters and evidence of the Great Reset, a proposed economic plan at the center of widespread conspiracy theories. So then someone put breaking. Isn't this a conflict of interest for Reuters? They work for the First Draft News, whose co-founder sits on the World Economic Forum. First Draft News members. Oh, I see CNN and Facebook and Washington Post and Sky News and Yahoo, Vox and AP. And then this person puts, one of the directors of Reuters fact-checking is also on the board of Pfizer. Nothing to see here, folks. Yeah. Let's see. This Eric Hartman puts out. So this is that video again of that Rochelle Walensky, the CDC director. And she is asked, will you follow the science and stop relying on faulty studies and end mask mandates for children in schools? And she reiterates that children should be masked and vaccinated. So this Eric Hartman says, I can't believe it took 20 months and some rando citizen to finally ask the CDC why their mask studies are all embarrassing, sloppy crap, and she still didn't answer. Yeah. John Kennedy put out, do you think we should forgive criminal behavior in the name of social justice? And Biden's nominee to be a federal judge refused to answer 9 times. Let's see. He says, President Biden's nominees to the federal bench are the most radical group I've ever seen. They are activists. They are, I wonder if it says jokers, wokers.
Well, of course, a president gets to nominate federal judges when there's a vacancy, but the Senate has to approve them. And first, they go before the Judiciary Committee, on which I sit. I think it would be fair to say that, and this was a surprise to me, maybe I was just naive.
I don't think Senator Kennedy is naive.
President Biden's nominees to the federal bench are the most radical group I've ever seen. They're not, most of them, I don't.
Oh, and that's, I don't know if that ended or if it clicked out. Let me see quick.
Well, of course, they are activists. Lawyer who can be fair on the federal bench. They are activists. They're wokers.
They're wokers. All right. So I am going to go like just for about 10 more minutes. Pixels and 412 aren't on tonight. I may do a little bit just more of Twitter, and then I think I'm going to hop out of Twitter because I think it's just going to keep doing the blinking stuff. And I really do believe it's Twitter. For whatever reason, it's happening on all my computers and stuff. So I just thought this was neat. Anyone else prefer the aesthetics of older cars versus new ones? I certainly do. I think older cars have so much more personality. No, I wonder if I have that. Oh no, I'll skip it. If you haven't seen it already, it's kind of heartwarming. It is a Chevrolet commercial, but it's on YouTube if you look up Chevrolet Christmas commercial, and it's just a heartwarming commercial. It's about, I don't know, like maybe 5 minutes long, and it has to do with an old car getting fixed up. So Smudger put out Boris's brother suddenly became a director for Dyson as soon as Dyson was given a contract for ventilators. So appointed on February 18th, 2020 as the director. Is that Boris's brother? Kind of looks like Boris to me, but I don't know him well enough to know if that's him or not, or his brother or not. I guess I didn't even really know Boris had a brother. I've seen his father in the news. Alex Lane says, I'm sorry, but I'm still amused that our government literally has put a death wish for the unvaccinated. They could have just said Merry Christmas and left it at that. I love Alex Lane's. So Bo Snerdley, Rush Limbaugh's sidekick, jabs for Jesus, refusing backs goes against Christianity, says Archbishop. I beg to differ, Mr. Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. I think you should read your Bible and then get back to us. So VB put this out. May the child Jesus be your guiding star in the desert of this present life. And that was by Saint Padre Pio. Jewish Deplorable put out breaking. City Maryland, it must be, shuts 13 clinics. No, City MD. Oh, maybe medical? City MD shuts 13 clinics in New York due to staffing shortages caused by vaccine mandates. Yeah, they keep saying it's that they're overwhelmed, but I think it's because of staffing shortages. It's definitely a possibility. And this Murray puts out, by the time they finish the border wall, Americans are going to be the ones jumping over it. Sometimes I wonder. And then I guess Pasucky, Peppermint Patty, said, we have saved Christmas. She wants us to believe that old Joe saved our Christmas. That's how propaganda works. No, I don't think they saved our Christmas. They tried to wreck our Christmas, and, we're saving our Christmas by doing what we want to do, having freedom to do what we want to do, God-given by freedom. So I thought this was an interesting tweet. What will we need for the parallel society? Vaccine passport expired. Your phone cannot make or receive calls, access internet banking, or travel pass services until it has been updated. Would you like to schedule a visit to the nearest vaccination center? Learn more. Okay. Where's the no button? Where's the shut off? And what will we need for a parallel society? That continues to run in my head too. So this was interesting. If y'all haven't seen it, it's on YouTube if you look up Breaking 911, but it was a live stream about watching the opening of Confederate time capsule discovered during a disassembling of Robert E. Lee statue in Virginia. I'm thinking it's over with. Let's see. If I can pull it up. Oh, wow. Okay. It is over with. Wow, it went 4 hours. I'm going to skip towards the end to see what they found. I did see them pull out a book.
This box has been through. It was in 70-degree heat on Friday and then freezing yesterday, and then, yeah.
Do you think so I'm sorry, I missed it. Went too far.
It is in the...
They were very careful pulling out the contents. I don't know if they actually have pictures of the contents yet.
This particular section has been most difficult. It may have sort of stuck to the
I do know they pulled out a couple books. Anyway, even that's twitching. So weird. But I think it's Twitter because it's always when I have Twitter up that my screen's glitch and stuff. I don't know why it would do that though. It's so weird. Anyway, just got 5 more minutes I'm going to take. I thought this was pretty neat. Hopefully it'll play through. That's so pretty. I don't know about you, but it helps me seeing things like this, things that are like in nature, out of my control. And just beautiful, interesting, intricate. I love that. It reminds me of God. And that I don't have to be in control. He's in control. He's got this. Let's see. Oh, this was interesting. And I don't know. So I just like to share information and provoke thought. That's what a lot of times these things do. So there's been things going around about the Nuremberg Code. I believe it's Poland that has been putting things out that they're charging certain people with crimes. So this Epstein sheet put out, so we're going to pretend this doesn't exist anymore. Nuremberg Code, Article 6, Section 3, no government can mandate or force medical treatment without individual consent. I was only following orders, will not wash as it did the first time. So, I think a lot of people, that's people's curiosity. And now we're seeing these, I believe there's a video going around on it and maybe some articles. But this commodus Trump put out, I heard it doesn't apply to our country as it was never ratified by us. And I don't know if that's true or not. And then somebody does answer, it doesn't apply to you if you believe that government ratifying it means they dictate your rights and can do things to you without your consent. Interesting response. Something to keep eyes on. It is going around, those articles and that video. Let's see. So this Anthony Mitchell put out after Disclosed TV put just in, FDA grants emergency authorization for Pfizer's COVID pill. And he said, LOL, someone called it the pill Pfizer-Mectin. Pfizer-Mectin. Yeah, because they probably basically it's ivermectin and they're reselling it for a lot more and who knows what else is added to it. So this Dr. Ward, when you think about, so I like social media and Twitter and things like this for these types of things. When people put things together and it's like, yeah. So Dr. Kelly Ward put this out. Can hospitals turn away the obese, smokers, healthy but debilitated people who didn't do anything to stay strong, drug users, alcohol abusers, anyone who makes a poor health choice in some elitist mind? Where would it end? Or are the only the second-class citizens the unvaxxed? And she's doing this in response to this Rex Chapman who put out, how about we all agree that hospitals have the right to turn away unvaccinated COVID patients? They have freedom of choice too, right? I'm sure the unvaccinated would have no problem with that and it would solve a lot of problems. Well, no, Rex, it doesn't solve a lot of problems, just like Dr. Kelly Ward said. Do you drink? Do you eat? Are you unhealthy in any way that, you chose some of these things or you did something that affected your health? So that doesn't wash. They took an oath to, treat people, and it doesn't wash. This whole thing doesn't wash. So there's that. And maybe I'll leave you with this. It's only 13 seconds. If any of you watch Ryan Holiall, he does those weather videos. He's getting quite popular on YouTube. I guess he was uploading this members only question and answer video on YouTube right now, but he put this video out. My son, who literally does not even know how to talk, makes fun of me several times for getting tongue-tied. What a bully.
Understanding intricate details just yet. That's pretty funny, ain't it, Echo?
And I don't know if his little boy really is named Echo, but I think he called his little guy Echo. And one more. My daughter, the Zeke Arcam put out, my daughter won this woke Monopoly game in a school contest where they're already trying to teach her that she's at some sort of disadvantage because she's female. It quickly found its way into the garbage. She's not hindered by her race or gender. That's what she's taught. So I'll end there, folks. I just want to say again, Merry Christmas. Thank you for tuning into the channel. I do not say breaking. So breaking, are you out there? Because I need breaking to turn off the stream, I believe.